Welcome to the AUDL's Cross Coast Challenge. Today in Toronto, San Francisco has come across the continent. The 7-2 FlameThrowers taking on the 7-3 Toronto Rush. Good afternoon, everybody. It is great to have you with us. He's Chuck Kindred. He got a gold medal at Beach Worlds 2 years ago. My name is Evan Lepler, and today, a couple of first-place teams. San Francisco from the west, Toronto from the east. Both these teams hoping for home field advantage, and a win today be a big part in that pursuit.
It's true, and this is kind of a clash of the Titans. Both these teams are on a big-time roll. They've kind of caught their stride. They've got a lot of tough competition within their divisions, but they're coming out on top. And this is interesting. It's anybody's game really today.
Yeah, both these teams are hot. Toronto, after the 1-2 start, has won 6 in a row. And this San Francisco team has won 3 straight, all by large margins. And while the FlameThrowers do not have Cassidy Rasmussen or Bo Kittredge or Grant Lindsley, the Bay Area is just chock full of so much talent, including this new phenomenon named Antoine Davis. The plays he has made this season in his first in the Bay Area, it's pretty hard to describe how impactful he's been.
It's true. I mean, he's a guy who's really starting to figure it out. He moves a little different than everybody else. He's got great size, great speed. He's so good in the air, and he's really got a toughness and just a hunger. When the disc goes up, you see his eyes light up. It's a little bit like a young Bo Kittredge or some of these folks that sort of separate themselves when it's a 50-50 ball. So much fun to watch, and he's still getting better.
One of his teammates said, Antoine Davis is like Bo Kittredge if Bo was playing hard all the time. Bo picks his spots as he has to do. For the Toronto Rush, Mark Lloyd's playing today, but this will be just his 3rd game of the year. Cameron Harris, number 91, has been the leader receiving, distributing. He also plays some defense too. Really versatile, important piece for the Toronto offense.
Right, that might be surprising if you're not as familiar with this Toronto team, but if you've watched this team, this is no shock. He's so good. He's always been just a nightmare for defenses. Really tough to game plan for. Very kind of unorthodox and very effective in the air with the disc. You know, he's got those step-back flick hucks. Even manages to avoid the collision there on his catch.
Well, there's a band pregame here. It was raining just a little while ago, but the sun is coming out, expecting a great night of ultimate. San Francisco and Toronto, the Cross Coast Challenge culminates next.
This piece with Eric is amazing to me. It's right in line with what we think is critical for kids, and that is to know their bodies.
The kids have really gotten into having speakers here that aren't just their teachers.
And I think the clinicians did a fantastic job. All the kids were engaged, none of them were distracted. They seem to get into it right away.
I just want to reach out to Eric and tell him, you know, thank you for coming and sharing the message that our kids can speak up. Early recognition is critical, and I look forward to doing more things with Eric in the future.
It's been great for us as a staff and for our students to experience the message you guys have, and highly recommend it for any school that has the opportunity.
Hi, I'm Jolis Larakis, and I'm the operations manager of Boone Technical Clothing here in the United States. I lost my mom last 2014 to breast cancer. She was 54 years old. It was pretty tough for me because I wasn't able to help her or have the kind of knowledge to be able to do something about the situation. I learned about Eric, about Jim's vision, about his organization, and I want to be part of it. Not only as an ultimate player, but also a son to my mom. I think one thing that early recognition is critical helped me was to be able to reach out to other people who are still having the chance or privilege to do something about the cancer within their family or like friends. I think that's what Eric is all about. It's just not within the sport. It goes on and off the field. If you volunteer, even though it's only you, you can be able to inspire and aspire other people to help the movement. And you never know. People are just waiting to be reached out to, and they're only waiting for you.
National anthems for both the United States and Canada just sung very nicely here at Varsity Stadium in Toronto. Gord Harrison and the Toronto Rush are ready for this interdivisional clash. Here are the standings in the West entering Week 12. San Francisco knocking off San Jose last weekend, and of course, Chuck, a week ago, Seattle began the weekend in a three-way tie in the loss column, and now they're all the way dropped down to fifth. It's a crazy race in that top five in the West.
It is. Seattle had a tough weekend. They're a scrappy team, though. I wouldn't be surprised if they climb all the way back up.
And here we are in the East. The DC Breeze actually have the tiebreaker with the Rush. So the Breeze, technically, if the season ended today, would be number one. But Toronto hoping to rise back above the Breeze. Montreal and DC do play tonight over in Quebec. That's a big game that we'll be following this evening as well.
Yeah, the East is really a fun division this year. It's kind of the three-team race at the top, but these other teams have so much firepower and just great fans. I feel like the East might be some of the best fans in the whole league.
Well, there's Cam Harris, who's been on the Toronto Rush roster every single season. He has put up some big numbers since the Rush joined this league in 2013. Of course, back then, Toronto was the king of the AUDL. They went undefeated in 2013, won the title, and they've just kind of been chugging along, 54-4 over their first 4 seasons in the league. And all of a sudden this year, Chuck, they're 7-3, which you think they're in first place, they're doing well. They had lost 4 games in 4 years in the regular season, and this year they've lost 3. So I think everyone else in their division is kind of rising up to them more than them taking a step back.
I think you're right. They're still very, very good. They've probably been a little surprised that they've had so much hard times, this year in the East. I think it's similar to what's going on with Madison, too. Madison is kind of used to winning the Midwest relatively easy. I won't say easy, but relatively easily every year. And this year, they got a handful with Minnesota, and Pittsburgh, with a healthy roster is so tough. I mean, as a fan, I absolutely prefer this, and I think you'll get the best out of Toronto this year because they really need to give it to you during the season.
Of course, I said Toronto has won 6 in a row. They had won 6 in a row until the loss against DC last Sunday. Antoine Davis, big part of this San Francisco 3-game winning streak. Davis and Marcelo Sanchez, the only guys who have played every single game this year for San Francisco. Davis and Sanchez have been the backbones throughout the season, and you would expect that today. They're both workhorses on either sides of the disc.
Yeah, big athletes. You know, this field is so big, you know, and it's in a turf field. I mean, this really does favor guys with great longer runs, big sprints, explosive moves, and that's kind of what you're seeing here. And these guys are going to have to work. You know, and it's worth mentioning, too, traveling across the country, you know, it definitely takes a toll on the body. It takes a toll on your endurance. You know, you're jet lagged, you're a little dehydrated, you're sleeping in a different bed. You know, it's hard to wake up and crack, and we'll see how San Francisco does with that. I mean, they've certainly traveled before.
Just a minute or two away from getting underway here in Toronto. And an interesting dynamic that we saw as the two teams lined up for the anthems and the introductions, Chuck. Yes, the game is 7-on-7. Ultimate in the AUDL is 7-on-7. But each team is allowed 20 active players. San Francisco has only traveled with 15. So it's 7-on-7, but it's also 15-on-20. How do you think that'll impact things?
Well, I mean, if last week was any indication, we saw Seattle struggle with a slightly shorter roster. I mean, this is a huge field. There's not a lot of downtime, so you might be able to get away with a shorter roster at a club tournament, especially if you have a limited number of games, for example. But out here, I mean, the points stack up on each other. There's not a lot of stoppages. The field is much bigger. It's a lot of running. There's just not a lot of breaks, so the recovery time is short, and you can really get worn out by the end of one of these games.
San Francisco coached by Yo Kawaoka, an old teammate of yours. Of course, he has a long history playing in the Bay Area. He played for the FlameThrowers, was a captain during their first season. Born in Japan, went to Cal, coached the Cal Berkeley UGMO team for 5 or 6 seasons, and now elevating to the AUDL. Toronto Rush, led by head coach Sachin Raina, the general manager and former head coach Scott Shooter Hasty, you see there in the red. He has elevated Raina to the head coaching spot. Hasty obviously still very much involved as an assistant capacity, very vocal, but this is very much Sachin's team as they take the field here today. Toronto will be on offense at the outset. Thompson McKnight, the quarterback of the Rush O-line, taking the field with Jeff Lindquist and Andrew Carroll, Adrian Yearwood, some of the other staples. Greg Cohen, Chuck, is one of 3 players on this San Francisco roster today that has won on this field before. Greg Cohen, Kevin Cox, and Marcelo Sanchez all won the AUDL title here 3 years ago. And the 4th and final installment of the Cross Coast Challenge underway. Toronto quickly gets Cam Harris the disc. They've got Seth Reinhardt on him. Devin Williams chasing Andrew Carroll. It's always interesting to see the early matchups. San Francisco's got Sawyer Thompson chasing Adrian Yearwood. Here's Carroll again on the near side, shooting to the end zone. And that's a leaping score for the Toronto Rush. That's Darren Wu, the former member of the Vancouver Riptide, so he knows about competing against these Bay Area teams in the West. He gives Toronto the 1-0 lead.
Yeah, great job by Andrew Carroll there, who made the throw. He was looking for this down-the-line shot earlier. Devin Williams did a good job of closing out on that the first time. The second time, Andrew gets the throw off, and that's real tough to recover from if you're downfield.
Darren Wu is certainly a nice mid-season addition to this Toronto team. He gives them a different level of explosiveness going deep on the O-line.
Oh, yeah, he's so fun to watch, and he's got that young, springy, kind of ultimate physique. You know, light guy, long, good arms, good hands.
Feels like
fast.
He's been around for a while, but he was 18 back in 2014 when he made his AUDL debut. This is just his 2nd game as a member of the Rush, but it was interesting. His first game, he primarily played O-line. They wanted to give that dynamic to the offense. So here comes San Francisco, led by Joel Schlockett. Bunch of guys who have represented Team USA on this roster. Schlockett, one of the members of the USA World Games roster, and he's here this weekend. First touch for Christian Johnson, and on his first throw of the season, he finds Antoine Davis for the San Francisco score.
Yeah, very relaxed downfield from Toronto. I saw Mike McKenzie give Christian Johnson several steps out. He collected the under and looked for a foot race with Antoine Davis. Always a good choice to give Antoine Davis a foot race.
Christian Johnson was an important player for San Francisco last year, but had stepped back from the AUDL this season. The FlameThrowers, sensing their roster might be a little weak on this road trip, gave Christian a call, and he obliged. I don't want to say coming out of retirement, but you get the idea.
Right. Somehow he's able to put it together for one more game.
Well, Yokawa Oka did that a couple years after he retired. He came back for a game. I said to Yo before the game, you only have 15 guys. Why didn't you bring your cleats? He said they didn't ask me to.
Right. He's probably thrilled they didn't ask, by the way.
He said it was great packing for a road trip without the cleats. It was much easier.
Nice. So this around flick has been consistently a problem for both defenses.
Tough catch by Carroll there on the sidelines.
And there's another.
Harris finally across the field. Ben Burrell dishes to Connor Armstrong. Pretty good offense so far. 81 seconds in, we've seen 3 scores.
Yeah, the wind has been pretty true. We're seeing guys get these around flicks off, and they're flying, making a true flight path, essentially, so making them very catchable. Cam Harris doing what he does, which is just exposing the weaknesses in the defense. I mean, he can do that by going, taking off downfield, but certainly when he gets the disc, I mean, everybody's on notice who's on defense downfield. There is a threatening throw with the disc, and he does what he does.
Ben Burrell coming over to Toronto from Vancouver last year, where he scored 38 goals for the Riptide. And Connor Armstrong, the 2016 Ultimate Canada Male Athlete of the Year. He captained the Canada Juniors team. One of the young guns that they really like in this Ultimate community.
Yeah, it's a great moment in Ultimate where we've got young players with great talent who've received a lot of really elite coaching. They're coming up, they're 19, they have all the fundamentals. They've even learned how to play in big games and keep their head. I mean, that's stuff that, honestly, back in the day, guys weren't getting there until their late 20s. And now you've got, Darren Wu joining a team on the O-line, the top team in the East. Like, what? Nobody that young ever joined an elite O-line before.
I was listening to San Francisco's Antoine Davis be interviewed as Schlockett unleashes long, looking for Sanchez. Zlatic in pursuit, but it's all Sanchez as that throw was perfect. Marcelo makes it 2-2.
Schlockett, so fundamentally sound. You see him step out, he's balanced, and he just drives this and keeps it flat. He always has a little bit of lip on this disc. He was one of the few guys I remember who was able to throw deep accurately with touch at altitude. And it's kind of because, he's got good power, he keeps it flat, and he lets that lip hang up so that it sits there. You can see Sanchez has all day to run onto this.
Can you clarify what you mean when you say he has a little lip on the disc?
Sure, it means you can see, it's a little bit hard to see on film, but essentially the disc is slanting back towards him, so it's kind of sitting almost like an air bounce release. It's got a little bit of that backwards facing slant so that it hangs, it slows down, it stays in the air. If you keep it level, it really kind of sits in the air. He's always been great at that.
So we're tied 2-2, and that disc nearly hit the ground. Instead, Burrell caught it and shoots it to Harris, who's all alone. Reinhart trailing behind. Centers to Yearwood. And into the end zone. Armstrong's second score. And this is looking like a shootout here today.
This is definitely an offensive battle. So you get to see the perfect counterpoint to Schlockett's huck with this lefty flick down the line. No float on it whatsoever. Comes out very bladey, which is exactly what you want because there really isn't a lot of space. But you can see him just drop this in. Goes up and comes down quickly. Cam Harris has steps. There's two good defenders in the area, but they don't have any time to get there. So very different throw for a very different situation. Both of them very effective.
An explosive start for both teams. It's not all that surprising when you think about the fact that San Francisco, through the first 11 weeks, is #1 in the league in scoring in the fewest number of passes. For the season, San Francisco has averaged about 8 throws per score on a scoring possession. Toronto is 7th in the league out of 24, so they're not that far behind them. And you see the teams that score fast, that get the easy goals, they're some of the better teams in the league, as you would expect. Lucas Dahlman finds Davis, who unleashes deep for Johnson. We saw this matchup in reverse before, and now Johnson from Davis for the easy score, and it's 3-all.
Right on cue. Another short offensive possession. You know, and at the elite level, when there isn't weather, when you've got, when you've got good pieces to play with, a break should be very rare, and we're kind of seeing that. These are two very, very finely tuned offenses, and you're going to be hard-pressed to stop them from scoring.
It's fun to watch the smooth offense, that's for sure. Going back to the point about young ultimate players getting coached, I was listening to an interview with Antoine Davis, and he talked about how he had the fortune of being coached from the time he started playing and in high school. H.B. Woodlawn High School in Virginia. He matriculated to Virginia Tech. Will Smolinski, who coached in the MLU and now is coaching with the DC Breeze, was basically his first ultimate coach. So, imagine your first coach being a professional coach. You can develop in a whole different way than, say, you or I could when we were just getting started playing this game.
No doubt. My first coach got arrested for selling drugs. No joke.
Sounds like a story for another time.
Yeah, it was not a role model. Let's put it that way.
Toronto back on offense. This is Darren Wu. He looks long for McKnight. Cohen peeled off his man, and Greg Cohen has the first D of the day.
Yeah, great job using position there from Greg Cohen. He's a guy who gets those hungry eyes when a disc goes in the air. You can see him kind of start to chop step as the guys get real big. And now he's going deep.
Cohen had a big game here in Toronto 3 years ago in the finals. And Cohen beats McKnight long for the game's first break today.
Tough sequence for Thompson McKnight. Looked like he was closing and might have had that right shoulder bid there. But he's sort of stacked up behind Cohen, and Cohen puts him on his back, makes the catch. So bookends for Greg Cohen. He's a guy, nobody's happier to catch a goal than Greg Cohen. I mean, he just loves it. And there was a year, I think it was 2 seasons ago, when the end of the quarter, I mean, he just owned the end of the quarter.
Yeah, he has for much of his career in this league been an end of the quarter juggernaut. Timing his jump. Obviously, he's got great size. Young man who won a couple of titles with the San Jose Spiders. He's assumed more of a leadership role with the FlameThrowers after living in the shadow of some of the other top guys in the Spiders like Kittredge and Cassidy Rasmussen, Ashlyn Joy. So Kevin Cox, the deep shot to Cohen for the game's first break, and now we see this Toronto D-line with Mark Lloyd and Jeff Powell and others playing offense.
So good to see Lloyd out there playing. He's just one of the special talents in the AUDL.
He might have been the best player on the field in 2014 at championship weekend, but the Rush obviously had a really bad day on that unfortunate Sunday when San Jose took the title.
Well, that's a great point. And, it wasn't the FlameThrowers, but it was a Bay Area team that came to Toronto on their home turf and really put it on the Rush. I mean, that was not a close game. That was an embarrassing loss. It'll be interesting to see if there's any residue from that loss here.
It's a low throw by Lloyd that Steve Armitage dug out. Now Armitage.
Wow.
That throw is behind Lindquist. Sawyer Thompson comes up with a D.
That's a heck of a stand there. A lot to look at if you're the thrower. I'm not sure how he didn't wind up throwing a goal there, but good pressure from San Francisco.
No one guarding Sanchez. 2 men on Davis. They throw it deep anyway. And there's Antoine Davis. Another break for San Francisco. This guy.
I mean, when that throw went up, I thought, hey, Marcelo, why don't you settle down, all right? Why don't you just calm down a little bit, because that's ridiculous. But then this happens. You see Antoine Davis just prove it, right? Here's the last goal. Nice layout D there from Sawyer. And this throw goes up, and especially from a guy like Sanchez, right? So conservative, always doing the right thing, throws this up, and you say, what does he know that I don't know? This looks ridiculous. This is what he knows.
Yes.
Even with contact on the back, I mean, he's got a guy on his front, a guy on his back coming strong, and that really wasn't close, was it?
Sanchez picks up the assist. Davis with his second score. I was excited to watch Antoine Davis today. My first chance to get to see him in person. You said you got to watch him practice with San Francisco Revolver in the club season last year. Does him making that type of play surprise you?
Kind of does, yeah. I mean, it shows how confident they are in him. I mean, certainly you saw that he was that good athletically that he could get there. I'm surprised he's there so quick. But last year, yeah, I came out to a Revolver practice right before Nationals, and I said, who's that guy? Who's the guy getting blocks on everybody?
Just a guy that actually former San Francisco coach Alex Dutchy Gesquier, who briefly coached Davis with the DC Breeze a couple years back. Dutchy's the guy that kind of greased the skids to get him a chance to be a practice player. As Harris hits Burrell after back-to-back breaks, the Toronto offense back on track at 5-4.
Yeah, way to right the ship if you're Toronto. Nice and steady, taking what they give you. I mean, really, it hasn't been an issue of getting good looks. They just kind of panicked there on the goal line in the last point. They just need to settle down, hit their open shots, and certainly nothing to worry about if you're Toronto. But yeah, it's a great point. I mean, checks in the mail. If you're Revolver or San Francisco, you got to send Dutchy a nice fruit basket or something, because he might have sent the future to your team. Antoine Davis is no joke. And actually, when I first met Antoine Davis, I walked up and I said, I think I just said, hey, I'm Chuck, you're Twan? And he said, Antoine. I think that's all he said.
He wanted you to refer to him by his full birth name.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he's the man, right? He said, did you just call me Twan? It's Antoine.
Would
and
you,
he goes and
would
gets
you
some
prefer
water.
I call you Charles?
I would not. I would not. But, you know, he's got that swagger. You see him when he catches a goal, he kind of stomps off like a gorilla, and you're just like, okay, I'm not messing with that guy. Whatever, you're the man.
Never got to ask you, do your parents call you Charles?
They did, but my dad's Charles.
Okay.
So then I liked, you know, I didn't like him to come to dinner. I wanted my own dinner, basically, and that was the main concern, so I went by Chuck.
San Francisco back on offense. Bayless to Schlockett. Sanchez taken off. And a big fake from Joel, and here comes Sanchez underneath.
Sanchez is so hard to guard in space.
Lucas Dahlman's been primarily a defensive player in the past, but they put him on offense, and he's showing he's got the skills there too. Jordan Marcy from Lucas Dahlman.
Good recognition by Marcy. I mean, he just kind of saw that even though Jordan a lot of times will stay around the disc, he saw that he wasn't really being prevented from taking off deep. No help defenders in the area, so he just went. And it's such a luxury. You know, these elite teams, everybody can really play every position. So a guy like Lucas can come back and handle. A guy like Jordan Marcy can just take off deep. Any of these guys can do anything, really.
Earlier this season, when the FlameThrowers were missing some of their O-line guys, Yokawa Oka pulled Lucas Dahlman aside and said, look, you're going to be our center handler today. He was like, what? You know, when you're thrust into that position without expecting it, it's a pretty big responsibility. But obviously capable to the task. Thompson McKnight, veteran offensive handler for Toronto. Here's Burrell. So you notice we got the 250-yard lines because we are in Canada. Canadian football field, 110 from the front of the end zone to the other. So the 55 is the midfield. They do things a little bit differently up here.
Some would say more correctly.
Yeah. It is a beautiful town. And when the weather gets nice, like it has been the past couple of days, it's kind of like Madison in the summertime. Everybody's outside. Everybody's active. It's a great crowd at the Blue Jays game last night. Well, if only the Blue Jays could have not given up 7 runs in the first 2 innings.
That's a tough night if you're a Blue Jays fan. Fun to watch for us, though.
McKnight to Burrell, wide open. He looked off Carroll on that open side. Now with a stall count rising, he squeezes it through to Harris. But a timeout was called from the Toronto sideline before the throw. You could see that was trouble. Sash and Reyna saw the same thing and called the timeout. You don't see a lot of timeouts with the O-line already on the field, but sensing the high stall count, they burned one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess, you know, you could see the panic, I suppose. But, yeah, you got your O-line and you're in the red zone. They get a difficult break off. I mean, that's the moment when you're probably going to throw a score. I wouldn't burn a timeout here. It looked like, I mean, that was an interesting last throw, though. It looked like some contact on the mark. I couldn't tell if that was initiated by the thrower or by the mark. But it looked like, yeah, well, let's see if we can take a look at how he gets this throw off.
Looked like Reinhardt just kind of stumbled on his own, I think.
Yeah, okay.
But I agree with you. I saw the same thing initially. Worth mentioning, just looking down in the crowd here, really nice crowd has turned out as the skies have cleared. Just saw a Charlotte Express jersey in the crowd.
No doubt.
That
it's
is
a collector's item.
Absolutely. Well, the Toronto Rush have been in the AUDL since 2013. And, you know, Scott Hasty said something to me before the game. Now the assistant coach for the Rush, the longtime coach, GM, basically said when we joined this league, you know, we wanted to see it grow as the Rush insert the disc into the end zone for the easy score. He said this is the type of game that when they started in the league, they hoped they would get to play. You know, you just want to play competitive ultimate. They had some long road trips early on to play a one-sided affair. And yes, you'd like to win big, but you like to beat a team that you respect. And quite frankly, early on, some of their opponents weren't worthy of their competitive respect. Clearly, San Francisco on their home field today, a special opportunity that they haven't had in the past.
Yeah, it's, you know, this Cross-Coast Challenge is pretty exciting, man. These are matchups that we've wanted to see for years, that you had to kind of hope and pray that you'd get lucky enough that they would be matched up in a semifinal. They both have to get out of their divisions and whatnot. It's, you know, it's kind of a tall order, but, I mean, these are two teams that I want to see played pretty much every year. These are great teams. They have kind of a different style. It's U.S. versus Canada. There's a lot in this matchup that's fun to watch. And, you know, as a fan who's been a fan of the AUDL for several years now, I mean, you kind of got to pinch yourself and say, are we watching a Bay Area team come to Toronto and play Toronto? This is awesome.
Crafty throw there from Marcy to find Johnson.
Mark Lloyd on an island with Antoine Davis. I would love to see that disc go up.
Justin Lim to schlock it, count it, and the foul. He was hit, and he finds Davis anyway. Third goal for Twan. So far, this San Francisco O-line has not blinked.
Yeah, they look very comfortable. Very comfortable. And, you know, they're carrying a lot of confidence here. So what we saw, I mean, it's worth mentioning, what we saw last week was Seattle coming down to SoCal to play a doubleheader weekend with a short roster is kind of a tale of two games. In the second half, especially into the fourth quarter, Seattle slowed down a lot. So it'll be interesting to see if San Francisco can avoid the same fate. There's not a lot of reasons to think they can. I mean, they're going to get tired. It's a hot day, too.
Yeah, and it's gotten hotter in the past hour since the rain stopped. You're absolutely right. Seattle Cascades had halftime leads in both their games last week and then faltered against both San Diego and Los Angeles. Things are very, very tight among the top five in the West. Big game later today. San Jose is at San Diego.
Look at that.
Perfectly on a platter. Yearwood to Burrell.
You know, we alluded to that in the open a little bit. Cam Harris getting the disc, and he'll throw this around flick break before he even puts his pivot foot down. Watch him step back and just release this in the moment before the mark can adjust. Reinhardt's right there. He throws before his right foot even touches the ground. And he does that a lot. He even does that on hucks. And if you've never tried doing that, try it. It's really hard to get power and control because you're not balanced. You don't have a solid base. And he does this all day. Reinhardt bites just, I mean, he just gives him a little backhand fake and then steps around. Easy break for Cam Harris.
Like in basketball, an outside shooter, you want to be on balance when you fire up your shot. And it's an incredible skill to be able to make tough, off-balance shots. I mean, Michael Jordan, best ever at that.
No doubt. Yeah, I mean, before that, if you shot a fadeaway, your coach would put you on the bench. Say, square up and get your weight into that shot, son. And then Jordan.
Pass the ball.
Right. And then Jordan redefined the game. It's kind of like watching Steph Curry shoot from 40 feet. And you're like, oh, I guess that's something we do now in the NBA.
He's usually on balance, though, when he shoots from 35.
It's true.
Marcelo Sanchez was warming up today in a Golden State Warriors tank. A lot of big Warriors fans on this FlameThrowers roster.
Yeah, some similarities between the teams, too.
Think so?
Yeah, just kind of their core value system. You know, they're kind of system driven. They thrive on positivity and buy-in and kind of like letting the game come to them. I'm not sure how to describe it, but there's kind of a fluidity and a flow that both teams have and actually, articulate and value.
Integrity call here. Mike Jones admits he calls a foul after the official called a travel. And, like the Golden State Warriors, feels like every year the San Francisco scene gets Kevin Durant coming to town, whoever the Durant is for that particular year. Lucas Dahlman hugged by Jeff Powell as he catches the goal. There's not a lot of love, though, in that hug from Jeff Bomber Powell. Just wanted to prevent a big-time collision. Powell, a guy who's been injured much of the year for Toronto, but he's a defensive stalwart and a Team Canada World Games guy that's just starting to get healthy. Obviously was involved in the controversial play at the end of the regular season last year. In the playoffs, I should say, with the DC Breeze, the collision with Markham Schaffner.
Earned him a suspension?
It did. He was not allowed to play in the championship weekend game against the Dallas Roughnecks.
Yeah, pretty big deal. I mean, he got obviously quite a bit of harsh feedback, not only from the league, but from some of his fellow competitors around the country, around the world. Interesting to see if he, certainly didn't light anybody up on that play. But I also couldn't tell if
Harris looking for Armitage. Cohen bearing down, and he's got another D.
I mean, there it is.
Or does he? They call interference there. Cohen bumping Armitage from behind. Cohen arguing his case.
Oh, wow.
Doesn't look like Armitage is going to overturn the call. And
so this would be kind of like.
Now he will. Integrity call from Armitage.
Left arm. Watch the left arm of Cohen. Kind of gets inside. Yeah, it looks like a clean play. Got position. Fought hard, ran hard to get position. Went up pretty straight.
So that's a couple integrity calls in the last 2 points.
Yeah, hats off to Toronto. I mean, they really don't have to do that, right? And if the spirit of the game goes away in Pro Ultimate, then they wouldn't.
Daring shot. Devin Williams juggling. And he made the catch near the front pylon. And it looks like Lindquist is arguing that the disc was down.
Refs are right there.
Let's take a look.
I'm not sure how he made this catch.
Really hard to tell. We were screened off as well. Looks like he had it, though.
Yeah, it looked like he somehow clutched it before it got to the ground.
So San Francisco keeps possession. And into the end zone for the break. 9-6, the FlameThrowers lead here in the opening quarter.
So let's compare this to a club game where if you've got two close calls like this and there's no refs, here's what I've noticed as a player is that, even if the right call, my goodness, oh, wow, I don't know. I don't know how he grabbed that with his hand, and I'm also not sure if it was down.
Really close.
That was the perfect angle, though. If we could slow that down. If he caught that, that was one of the craziest catches I've ever seen. Can we get that same angle? Because that was bananas. I couldn't even see how good of a catch that was. So let's see if we can look at this. Coming in here, bobbled around off his hip. Oh my goodness!
What do you think?
It looked like he got it. I can't believe he got it. Where do you learn to do that?
You don't. If they're practicing that in the Bay Area, that seems pretty absurd.
That's like a flutterguts catch.
I'm not sure he got it.
I'm not sure he did either. But
important possession here for Toronto. And Carroll hits Lloyd. And it took just 18 seconds off the clock. Lot to digest in these first 11 minutes and 10 seconds.
Yeah, this is interesting. So the thought I was starting to make is just that when you're in a game where you're having to make your own calls, sometimes what I've noticed as a player is that I start to get a little salty. I get a little suspicious. Man, there's a lot of close calls. I don't know about that one. I don't know about this foul. I don't know if that disc was up. By the end of the game, it's like, I pretty much want to rip your throat out, you know? And I'm going to pretend like I'm happy. I'm going to pretend like I'm here to play. But I don't trust you. I don't like this. And when you got refs, it's slightly different. You know, it doesn't become as personal. You're not making all the calls.
I think there's been a level of skepticism. Would the spirit remain in a referee league? And I think the jury's probably still out. But, you know, there are always instances of saltiness, as you put it, in every level of competition, in every sport. I think through week 11 of 2017 in the AUDL, spirit as high as it has ever been in Ultimate. So's the level of competition. San Francisco's offense turns it over for the first time on a drop from Christian Johnson. The Rush have 24 seconds. Hune over the top to Lloyd, guarded by Davis. 15 seconds. McKenzie swings it and into the end zone. Jason Hune brings the Rush within one on their first break of the game.
That's got to make you really happy if you're Coach Reyna here, seeing the D-line, you know, get a lot of pressure on the offense, gets the turn, and then calms down. I mean, there's a moment, you know, Christian Johnson just biffs this catch. There's a moment where you kind of see the panic. You see them start to think about throwing something maybe questionable, but they don't do that. They reset, they swing. You got 53-yard wide field, and they get a wide open look on the other side. Well done.
Mario Zlatic, the assist to Jason Hune. And Sachin Reyna's team back within one. Of course, they're currently trailing by 2 breaks. This is an important final 9 seconds of the quarter here for the Toronto D. Jonathan Martin and Mark Lloyd are just lingering as 2 last backs.
And here comes Cohen. Oh, turn.
Dahlman kept it alive, but he's struggling to get anything off. And that's the end of the quarter.
Or is it a stall? I think it's the end of the quarter.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
I saw Greg Cohen trotting down the sideline.
Yeah, you had Antoine Davis and Sawyer Thompson and Seth Reinhart and Greg Cohen getting ready to go up against Lloyd and Martin. Kind of feel a little cheap that we didn't get that showdown there, but still a strong close to the quarter for the Toronto Rush. San Francisco, though, in charge in the first. Antoine Davis making plays. 9-8. San Francisco done with 1 here in Ontario. Great view of the CN Tower, a staple of the Toronto skyline. The Rush trail by 1, but they've got to feel pretty good after trailing by as many as 3. Toronto closed that quarter on a 2-0 rally.
Yeah, you know, if I'm Toronto, I'm feeling pretty good because it is a hot, muggy day. This is a team with a short roster.
San Francisco is.
Right. San Francisco with a short roster. They are going to get tired, no doubt.
Is it just me, or has the humidity gone to about 10,000% in the last 30 minutes or so?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fat, so it's hard for me to say, but I think it's hot. Yeah, I think it's really muggy.
We could use a breeze, and I'm not asking for Alan Kolick and David Cranston and Rowan McDonald and company to show up. They got their own work to do in Montreal. First meeting ever between the FlameThrowers and the Rush. Both these teams have been perennial postseason contributors. In fact, neither of these squads has ever missed the postseason in their time in the AUDL. But San Francisco, Chuck, still looking for their first postseason win as a franchise. They're 0-3 and fortunate to keep the disc there.
And they're really good at catching discs that are about to hit the ground at awkward angles. I don't know how they're so good at it.
Schlockett looking for Dahlman. Can he get there? No, too far. Schlockett overthrows Dahlman, and now Toronto has a chance to tie.
So different shape. So here's Schlockett with a deep shot with a very different shape. That one doesn't really have the lip up facing back. Doesn't float as much, more outside in.
Powell looking long for Martin. Davis collides with him. Martin keeps his feet and makes the catch. Lloyd to the end zone. Jason Hune ties this thing up. 3 straight for the Rush.
Great adjustment deep there. Not an easy catch. Antoine Davis, I think, was looking at the disc. Didn't realize where he was and ran right onto the receiver. And yeah, that's harder than it looks for Jonathan Martin to keep his balance, keep his feet, and make the catch. That can be a little tricky.
So San Francisco's O-line unbroken in its first 7 opportunities, and now back-to-back points. The O-line gives up a goal. From 9-6 with 1:09 to go in the first quarter, Toronto has rallied back into it. And it wasn't like they used a double score or anything. They didn't get the disc to start the second quarter.
Yeah, they're looking really good.
Let's see if San Francisco can stabilize. Sanchez, Davis, Johnson, all downfield. Justin Lim, Joel Schlockett as well. This is Lim, marked by Zlatic. Davis and Lloyd, a fun matchup. Jones comes to double, and Davis nicely steps through it. Davis over the top, that's hanging, and it's defended. Knocked away by Mario Zlatic.
Great D by Zlatic to get up and not foul.
So in the last couple points, we saw Schlockett with a throwaway. We saw Davis the throwaway. 2 of the top San Francisco stars with errors. Toronto looking for the lead again. Harrison under pressure. Turns it over. Schlockett hustles for the D. FlameThrowers 7-2 on the season. Lost to San Jose back in April. Also a 1-point loss to Seattle. Justin Lim, the calm clap catch. And the FlameThrowers maintain a slim 1-goal lead.
Yeah, nice 2-man game there from San Francisco. Zlatic kind of kicking himself. He should have released deep. Instead, he got sucked in on the give and go and let the goal essentially unfold.
You know, you're watching these guys come back to the bench, and you're seeing some signs of fatigue. And there's a long road before the finish line today.
Oh yeah, it is hot. The sun's out. I mean, a lot of these games that we cover are more evening games. You see the lights come on. I mean, we started at 5 p.m. right off a storm, so the air's thick. The sun comes out. The temperature goes up 10 degrees. It's going to be very hard to stay fresh. There's no shade on the sidelines. Very hard to stay hydrated.
It's a great point. But no shade, no tents on the sidelines. Really nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And don't think that the booth is nice and cool, because we are roasting up here too.
For the love of the game, you know?
Indeed. McKnight initiates play to Harris. Carroll. And that throw was either deflected by the Mark Thompson or just misthrown by Carroll. Either way, San Francisco has it.
A lot of times the way you see fatigue is with what look to be mental errors. And I think we're starting to see some of those. Guys are exhausted, they're dehydrated, they're sweaty.
Leo Gaval calls a timeout. Usually you see that called from the coach, but he's like, look, we got the D. You guys go out there and score the goal. We'll take the timeout too. Here in Toronto, the Rush trailing the FlameThrowers by 1.
Early recognition is critical. Teaches middle school PE classes about ultimate Frisbee and cancer symptom awareness.
We're a registered nonprofit that advocates for an active, healthy lifestyle, body awareness, and speaking up if something is wrong.
Skills that, when it comes to cancer, can help save a life. Ultimate is a fast-paced team sport that's self-refereed, non-contact, and co-ed.
Spirit of the game is the foundation of Ultimate. That means we communicate respectfully, we're fair-minded, and we enjoy the game.
Ultimate is accessible to everyone. All you need is a Frisbee and some friends. Our team of coaches is made up of experienced and passionate leaders from the Ultimate community.
We can come to your middle school and run your PE classes for the day. And if we're not in your area yet, we'll send you our clinic in a box, where we give you the resources to run your own.
We are Eric! And we want to work with you and your school.
Out of the timeout, San Francisco with the disc. And an immediate double team pressures the reset. Sanchez downfield. Johnson, Lim, Schlockett, and Davis, the cutters. You know, it's funny, early on, Chuck, Toronto was getting so little defensive pressure. And now you can just sense things are getting a little bit harder for the FlameThrowers offense.
100%. I think, you know, Toronto's got a deeper roster. These guys are waking up. They're running full speed. They might even be running faster than they were before. And if you're San Francisco, you're saying, give me some of these easy open cuts, pretty please.
Bayless sizzles the flick for Davis. McKenzie comes in the double.
Great pressure on the resets here. I mean, that's a really high-level double team releasing to stop the dump. I mean, you've only got 7 seconds, and it's a silent count. That is not what you want if you're a handler.
Everything difficult, but so far San Francisco's making the tough throws and catches. And Bayless punches it in to Schlockett for the FlameThrowers score, and that is a FlameThrowers break.
Yeah, you know, the best time to throw or the best time to break is as soon as you catch, and you start to see that from San Francisco. They're saying, you know, the longer we wait, the harder these throws are. A tough I.O. flick to Jordan Marcy without a lot of space, really. And from that point on, you just see quick throw after quick throw, never letting Toronto get settled, never really letting the defender triangulate so you can see your man and the disc. That's the easy stuff. That's what you want to do.
Joel Schlockett had 3 assists in the first quarter. But that's his first goal for the guy that led the gold medal winning Team USA in goals at the WUGC Championship in London last year. I suppose it's redundant to say WUGC Championship.
I wasn't going to point it out.
Like the ATM machine.
Right. I'm still kind of blown away that he led everybody in London. You just don't think of him as a goal scorer.
You do now.
It's hard to deny at this point. think of Sean Hamm as a goal scorer. You know, like this is a guy that if the disc is in the end zone, he's catching it.
Well, Schlockett coming up more of a mid, more of a connector than a deep threat. There's Andrew Carroll. Now, I was wondering if we get to see Carroll and Schlockett match up today, because Carroll is the type of guy that, I don't know if I could say give Schlockett problems, but if anyone could, it would be a guy like Carroll.
Yeah, he's got the kind of movement that potentially could bother Schlockett. Schlockett's essentially used to being able to explode, change direction, and get a look on pretty much anybody. That would be fun to watch. See if Carroll can just stay on him side to side, or do a cutting drill, put them both in the box of death, and then see if Schlockett can get a step under on Andrew Carroll. I don't know if he could.
We have really not had a long point yet in this game.
Yeah, is that potentially collusion between the two teams saying, I won't if you don't?
Longest point we had was the break when Devin Williams had the crazy circus catch. That point lasted 1 minute and 16 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Every other point has been shorter than that, and we've scored 21 goals in just over 16 minutes.
Lucas Dahlman looks the poacher out of the way to get that IO. Well done. Shot goes up deep.
Schlockett set up that cut, and he runs it down. Martin gained a yard or two from behind, but Schlockett with the score for San Francisco.
Yeah, great speed from Martin.
It's really interesting how Schlockett set up that cut in the stack. He went out, he went in, he went out, he went in, and then by the time he went out again, his defender was roasted. Give Martin credit for making up some ground, but not the first guy to get roasted by Joel Schlockett in space.
It's true, he's so under control. I mean, that's the thing that's difficult about Schlockett, is he's making hard cuts and he's changing direction, but he's also always ready to adjust. So a lot of guys, when they plant under and go deep, they've kind of got all their weight committed to the deep cut. And it would be awfully hard for them to do anything but go deep at full speed. He's a guy who can adjust at any time, and he's really great at seeing his defender. Did he look away? You know, are his hips turned? And whenever he sees something that he can take advantage of, he does. And that's why a guy who's not that big can take almost anybody deep.
Ooh, big bid from Reinhardt. Slow to get up. Cox fortunate to get up. And Toronto scores. More importantly, Reinhardt did pop up, and it appears he's all right. Darren Wu, another score for the Rush, and the goals are just fast and furious right now. That one took 22 seconds off the clock.
Assistant coach Hasty for the Rush makes sure Seth Reinhardt's okay. Yeah, hard to see what happened. Might have been a shoulder, might have just hit his chest hard, could have been the hip. When you're a big guy like Seth Reinhardt hitting the ground, well, there's a lot going on there.
So what's interesting, Chuck, in 23 points over 17 minutes, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we've had a multi-turnover point yet. Most turnovers on a single point has been one.
Well, let me check that against my stats. Yes, that is correct.
Your stats are meticulous.
They're quite good.
Wu the score last time. San Francisco back on 0. I mean, this is just a heavyweight fight. Two boxers counterpunching right now. Maybe you land one, but the other team's coming right back.
A lot more close calls.
Johnson accelerating. Justin Lim, the assist.
That's a pretty throw from Lim.
Only 21 seconds off the clock on that point.
You know, a lot of coaches will say, you know, if your cutter's cutting directly away from you, you know, maybe think about holding on to that disc. It helps when they're close. It helps when the cut's coming from a couple yards away, which is kind of what happened here. But you see Lim make a throw where you almost have to create an angle. You throw it outside in so that it moves out to the right and settles back into the left. But essentially, you know, Johnson's cutting straight away from you. There's no angle to throw to. And you'll see guys blow that throw quite a lot.
Justin Lim, ever since his freshman year at Carleton, showed how he can be an anchor to an O-line. handling the disc. I mean, I remember watching him and San Jose's Justin Norden lead the way for Carleton back in 2013, 2014. Lim graduated from Cut in 2016.
How many great Carleton teams are there? I mean, you think about all the iterations of just fantastic men's Carleton teams.
They've won 4 national titles. Only UC Santa Barbara has won more in the USA College Series. It's been a long time since Santa Barbara won one. I think it was 1998. Not in the end zone yet. Burrell needs to set a pivot foot and face the double team. Resets for Yearwood. The veteran Canadian handler. Yearwood pressured by Cox, gets it off, and that will work.
Yearwood's always had that just powerful flick break, sits down, rocks the defender, and just drives that flick all the way to the other side. He's a handful.
Third goal for Darren Wu. Took Yearwood a little while to find the open man, but he did.
Yeah, these, you know, Yearwood's got big boy throws. And you just see him kind of set this up, set it up, move the mark, and then just bang. Brings his weight down, shreds another mark.
That point took a long time, Chuck, 51 whole seconds.
I got bored, I'm not gonna lie, I got bored. I was waiting for a goal.
The FlameThrowers by 1 and receiving. San Francisco doesn't have the easiest of schedules down the stretch. 4 of their final games, 4 of their last 5 games, I should say, on the road. They're at San Jose next Saturday and home for Seattle on July 15th. The game we'll have for you. Christian Johnson makes the catch. Another quick strike for San Francisco. Dahlman to Johnson.
That's a nice side stack play. Gets the first throw on this little inside backhand from Marcy. And Dahlman, I mean, Christian Johnson has steps. He's not wide open, but Dahlman's able to step around and put this out to the backhand side, which actually makes it a little easier, I think, for Christian Johnson. Powell closes hard. But man, Christian looks really steady. I mean, he just, when the disc goes up deep, he looks very confident with his matchups.
Certainly a clean contest and good spirit from Powell after Johnson made the catch. Well, after the 51-second point, that last one was just 12 seconds off the clock.
I mean, that's what I'm talking about. This is professional. We're trying to get sponsors here, okay? We're trying to get some major sponsors. I appreciate if you could throw some more goals.
The pace you're looking for.
Right.
Low throw, kept alive by Burrell, and then he throws it away.
I think people are so confident in Andrew Carroll's speed and change of direction that they just make all kinds of throws to him. I mean, watching him cut on that point was pretty impressive. He got huge separation deep, carries momentum into his undercut, which is actually very difficult to do.
And there was contact on the release of the throw, which will save us, at least for now, from having a multi-turnover point.
Nice poachers in the lane from Toronto, kind of forcing San Francisco to move it around to the other side. Lots of switches from Toronto. And they're kind of jamming up the center, leaving one of the handlers open. And they get what they want. No clean looks. Guy's not sure where to cut. Throw into traffic.
This is Carroll. The first multi-turnover point of the game. And it ends with Cam Harris in the end zone. Going back to your point about the switches. You know, these are two teams. One, a lot of good players in San Francisco, but the rosters are fluctuating so much every week. Toronto has a lot of guys who have played every game. Another handful of guys have played 9 of their 10 games. This is a team that has fostered chemistry and cultivated that defensive experience to play as a team and work those switches to frustrate opponents.
Yeah, I think they've always had somewhat of an advantage there. You know, kind of a chemistry advantage. See Devin Williams there laying out, didn't realize Reinhardt was behind him, but, you know, great possession here from Toronto. And, I mean, there really is no substitute to just knowing what the other guy's thinking. You know, on D, I know that they're not, I know I can trust this guy on the mark. I know that if my guy cuts in and I point, this guy's going to open up, see it, we can switch. And when you're playing with new guys every week, I mean, you just don't know. I mean, theoretically, right, these guys are all coached, they're all trained, they're all elite. So you should be able to kind of do whatever you want, but it really isn't true. I mean, anybody who plays knows that it's just not always the case. And I think Madison and Toronto have always sort of separated themselves in their division because of that. They're always on the same page, and they're well coached. Coached also for scenarios. Wow, great touch by Mark Lloyd.
Lloyd got a piece of it, but somehow it still got to Marcy. Is there anything more frustrating for a defender than getting a piece of the disc and not getting the D? He won't get this one either. Schlockett turns on the Jets.
Yeah, Mark Lloyd, you know, he's an interesting guy. A lot of folks, you know, they're well coached, they're fundamentally sound, but he's just got great awareness. You know, one of our production members called him visionary. It's a nice way to say it. He's a guy who, I mean, you can call it field sense, you can call it whatever, but he recognizes moments, kind of like when he threw that infield greatest last year.
That was unbelievable in the semifinals against Dallas.
Yeah, at the end of the quarter, he catches it inbounds and you know, throws a little chicken wing to the end zone before landing. Jeter-esque, you know, like that's the moment. There's only one thing that could possibly work, and somehow he recognizes the moment, makes the perfect play. And right here, I mean, you know, most guys would have their head down. They're trying to cover the dump. The dump goes up line. They just, you know, they have everything they can do to just cover the dump, one thing at a time, right? And he's covering the dump, and he also sees that the thrower pivots around and has time to get his hands up while running to his left.
Of course, that was last year when Lloyd was not at 100%, still coming back from the ACL injury that cost him basically all of the 2015 season, and yikes, Cam Harris flubs that clap catch. Cox to Cohen to the end zone, and it's knocked away. Oh, it looked like Thompson was there, but Armstrong came through and got the D.
That's a great D by Armstrong. A lot of guys quit on that. A lot of defenders will just kind of quit and say, ah, shucks. Not Connor.
Harris scoobers it to Wu. Burrell. Remember, Wu and Burrell were teammates with the Riptide last year, and how about that placement? Burrell drops the hammer. Andrew Carroll gets the goal. A lot to dissect from that point.
Yeah, pretty throw here. So here's the catch, kind of sees that there's defenders flooding the right side of the field and just steps back, drops this in over the top. So nice scooper there from Cam Harris. You know, Cam actually had a drop on that point.
He did.
On, you know, one of the easier catches he'll have today. Chose to go. I mean, so there's a threshold, I think, if you're going to claw catch it, which I think is what he did, where you have to shift from going overhand. If it gets low enough, you got to catch it underhand or pancake it. And I think he was in that kind of that weird middle region where he's overhand claw catching it, but it's at his waist. Sometimes your eyes don't see that as well.
That's a really wise observation. I think you're absolutely right. Good contest from Jeff Powell. Could not get the D on Schlockett. To Johnson, looking long. Sanchez didn't realize it until late, and that split second cost him. Now Toronto's got a chance to tie with 2:20 and ticking remaining in the first half.
Yeah, tricky throw from Christian. Kind of a tough angle. And, you know, Cello might have been able to get to that speed-wise, but he was also changing direction. He had to go from cutting to the backhand side, if you're a righty, all the way over to the forehand side. He couldn't quite get his momentum changed in time for a clean bid here. here's the shot. You can see he's coming as hard as he can, trying to turn. Has to roll his shoulder just to get a hand on it.
Marcelo Sanchez, the Iron Man in the Bay Area. Between his time in San Jose and his time with San Francisco, today is his 45th consecutive game played. Dating back to 2014 with the Spiders. The record for most consecutive games played, still alive. New York Empire's Matt Lamar has played 72 consecutive games. He's played every game in Empire franchise history. And he's on the roster for the Empire's game against Philly tomorrow.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that streak was going 72 games.
Think about that.
This
No
isn't the NBA.
injuries, no vacations,
Right.
no conflicts, no weddings.
No weddings.
Ultimate weddings during the AUDL season have crippled many a consecutive game streak.
No doubt. That's a young man with very few friends or great priorities.
Right. Toronto on offense out of the timeout. Carroll found Harris, who thought about the big windup. Air bounces that nicely to McKnight.
I would love to see a montage of Carroll just cutting downfield. It is really something to see.
Just ISO him.
Yeah, I mean, even the cuts that don't get thrown to, he gets so open.
Toronto has tied it up. What a first half for Andrew Carroll. He's already got 4 assists, and that was his 3rd goal. He's been involved in 7 of the Rush's 15 scores.
Yeah, I think you're right. He does kind of move like Schlockett. He's just going to constantly be a pain in your butt if you're a defender. If you're guarding Carroll, you know, bring your lunch pail, because it's going to be a long day. This guy doesn't stop. He's great in the short spaces. He's actually pretty good with the disc as well. And man, you put him out in space. I mean, I love these these kind of open field situations where you see cutters just disappear. I mean, this guy just creates separation, carries momentum. He can go out and come under, and he'll be open out, he'll be open under. And if you're Toronto right now, it's 15-15. You're winning. If you're Toronto, you're winning. If you keep it close, you're winning, I think.
And you think that because they've got 20 active players and San Francisco's got 15?
I do, and this sun is no joke. You know, it's hot and muggy. 2 things it never is in San Francisco is hot and muggy. Never.
Breton Tan on the mark. Double team comes on Marcy, back to Bayless. 90 seconds in the half and a 15-15 high-scoring showcase in the AUDL Cross Coast Challenge. We saw Raleigh come back to beat DC in overtime. We saw Seattle hold off Pittsburgh. Madison fell at home to Dallas, and now Toronto looking to take the lead into the half on the D from Mike McKenzie. And they called a traveling violation there.
I think his foot was not on the goal line. It was kind of a half step from the goal line.
That costs him a little time and a little momentum as the clock continues to tick. Under a minute, low throw turned over.
Wow, that's big. Right on the goal, not even on the goal line, in the goal.
Bayless takes the free reset. And Marcy was in, and he was caught by Powell.
And Powell likes to hug people.
Yes, he does. So the FlameThrowers still in front. That was more Marcy jumping into Jeff's arms than vice versa.
It's true. I think they were having a chuckle about that. But it's a funny thing. When you have a reputation for being physical, it's a funny thing. It follows you around.
So we got 35 seconds on the first half clock. 31 goals already on the board. the highest scoring halves of the season anywhere in the AUDL. The D's have been few and far between, Chuck. Greg Cohen has a couple of them. No one else has more than one. There haven't been too many others. Cohen taking a shot. Davis lingering. Comes up with a D. Oh, Antoine Davis elevates and gets San Francisco the disc back. Clock stopped because the disc went out of bounds with 10 seconds remaining.
Interesting scenario here.
You don't want to strand Dahlman or turn it over if you're San Francisco.
Ooh, that is risky.
Thompson, lefty backhand, not going to make it to the end zone. And Toronto comes up with a D. Harris and Cohen agree that there was no call necessary, and that will be the end of the first half. There's a member of the rush slow to get up over there.
Looked like Darren Wu might have taken a hand to the head from Antoine Davis going for the mega mac to the end zone.
That is indeed Wu.
That's a fun matchup. Darren Wu going against Antoine Davis, especially on that high ball. So yeah, it looked like Davis was trying to mac it to the end zone, hit Wu in the head. Welcome to the big leagues.
What a first half. We got to catch our breaths. 31 goals in the 24 minutes. San Francisco has a 1-goal lead, but Toronto right where it needs to be in these conditions on their home field. Halftime here in the cross-court. Okay. 16-15 is your score at the half. San Francisco leads Toronto by 1 in the Cross Coast Challenge. There's a great event at halftime here. Bunch of kids taking the field for a little ultimate exhibition. We're here in the booth. He's Chuck, I'm Evan. We lost the jackets. That is how hot it is. The hair is still looking very suave. It seems to handle the heat well. Your thoughts on that first half? Bunch of plays from both sides. We saw Davis rise up. We saw Andrew Carroll be really tough to guard. We saw a really solid, complete 24 minutes of ultimate.
Yeah, that was pretty fun to watch. A lot of firepower, a lot of offense, not a lot of defense. But part of that's due to the fact that you've got 2 elite offensive units out here. And man, I could see Darren Wu against Antoine Davis about 15 more times in the second half. Any thrower who throws to that matchup, I'll give you $5 Canadian.
Toronto rush going crossfield. Ben Burrell, pretty impactful. When Darren Wu joined the team, the rush wanted to put him on the offense to give Burrell someone that he's played with for a long time. It really has helped to get Burrell going. Jonathan Martin on the deep shot. Darren Wu, several goals for the rush. Not sure about that celebration, but he's young. He'll work on it. Christian Johnson had a drop, had a throwaway, but also had some nice shots and a couple good deep shots.
Yeah, Christian Johnson actually was a difference maker, I think, in the first half. He was doing a lot of good cutting, real steady throwing, closing out against, tough defenders. And this might be the highlight of the first half. Antoine Davis with a guy on his front, a guy on his back, making Marcelo Sanchez look good for throwing that.
And one of those defenders was Jeff Powell, who will be one of the top defenders on Team Canada, the World Games team that's headed to Poland in a little over a month. Lots of great stuff going on right now in Ultimate. The World Beach Championships are starting tomorrow in France, and we're a month away from the World Games, plus the AUDL regular season winding down, and all counting down to August 26th and 27th when we get to go to Montreal for championship weekend. And I think it's safe to say it'll be the most unpredictable championship weekend we've ever had, because we have no idea what's going to happen, and we follow this stuff pretty closely.
We do. This has got to be the most up-in-the-air season. So much parity, so many upsets. I mean, you know, even last year we saw Seattle go down and just run the table in the South. I didn't have Seattle getting out of their first game potentially, and they not only got out, but they rolled San Francisco in the final of the West. And once again, they're not even top 2 in the West. I mean, you just never know. You just never know.
How do you think Seattle's going to bounce back from last weekend? And they're off this weekend. They beg your pardon. They play at Vancouver this weekend, and they have got a big home game against San Diego next week.
Yeah, I mean, that's a team that seems to get better as the season progresses. So I would never count them out. They've also got elite talent. You give them a 20-man roster, that's a long night for anybody. I don't care where they're playing. I don't care who they're playing. You'd be hard-pressed to get a win against 20 Seattle Cascades.
Well, we'd like to know who you think will make it to championship weekend. You can reply to us on Twitter. Tell us the 4 teams from each of the 4 divisions. He's at Chucktown Now. I am at Evan Lepler. If you say something particularly witty, we might mention you on air in the second half. Chuck won't. Maybe he will. He's pretty friendly he's like a cuddly bear. 16-15 San Francisco leads Toronto at the half. Lots of Ultimate to play. Lots of Ultimate being played on a gorgeous Saturday night in Toronto. Perhaps some of the future stars of the AUDL and in the Ultimate world. Halftime showcase with the FlameThrowers leading the rush 16-15. We're still catching our breaths from the first half. Last week was a breathtaking week of Ultimate in the AUDL. It was week 11. There were 9 games, including 3 matchups between number 1 and number 2 in their respective division. Plenty of highlights. Let's take a quick view of the top 10 plays from week 11 in the AUDL. Dangerous handler coming on, talked about enough. George, great touch for the goal. That's Eli Friedman. Soaring and scoring for LA.
And just turning it over on the swing.
They're going to play a little catch and see somebody stop them.
Mott with a scuba.
Sean Mott with Scotty Shue.
Scott Shue with his goal there.
The litmus test if these two teams match up in the playoffs, so absolutely not. Big shot.
Good run, layout, and what a catch! Isaiah Massett-Kelly with a beautiful play. And he just goes all out to catch this one.
Been really.
They've had 1 or 2 drops.
Mott looking deep to Martin here. Oh, and Greg Martin goes up and puts his man on a poster.
That's
unbelievable grab.
Ball count rising. Push the get it. Oh, great D on the near sideline by Steven Milardovich.
There he is.
Remember that moment with 9:30 to go.
Unlock. Two deep players.
Looking for Colin Konesh. And Brownlee goes up there.
From the far side. Yeah.
Skying 2 Toronto players and his own teammate for the Broncos. And on the way out of the point, he signed a fan's disc. How about that?
To go. Burton down to 4. Lets it rip. Will it come back in? Oh, that was ridiculous. How did he do that?
That is some big boy ultimate from Mark Burton. Does it again, just throws his guy open. Perfect throw.
Able to get the Conger. Conger's gonna take a shot. Oh, what a grab by Waldron.
Lets another one fly.
Foot race, Zachary Theodore against Tommy Lee.
Oh, what a grab! Tommy Lee, horizontal, giving everything for the Cascades goal.
Tommy Lee is a young up-and-coming superstar. He's flashy, he's athletic, he's a good-looking kid. He goes deep, takes Zachary Theodore to the house in a huge layout catch. Look at this extension that he gets. Just puts it all on the line, makes the catch. And that's one of those ones, you know, if you don't catch that, the bad news is you got to get up and play D after a long sprint.
Early recognition is critical. Teaches middle school PE classes about ultimate Frisbee and cancer symptom awareness.
We're a registered nonprofit that advocates for an active, healthy lifestyle, body awareness, and speaking up if something is wrong.
Skills that when it comes to cancer can help save a life. Ultimate is a fast-paced team sport that's self-refereed, non-contact, and co-ed.
Spirit of the game is the foundation of Ultimate. That means we communicate respectfully, we're fair-minded, and we enjoy the game.
Ultimate is accessible to everyone. All you need is a Frisbee and some friends. Our team of coaches is made up of experienced and passionate leaders from the Ultimate community.
We can come to your middle school and run your PE classes for the day. And if we're not in your area yet, we'll send you our clinic in a box, where we give you the resources to run your own.
We are Eric!
And we want to work with you and your school.
Hi, I'm Joel Larakis, and I'm the operations manager of Boone Technical Clothing here in the United States. I lost my mom last 2014 to breast cancer. She was 54 years old. It was pretty tough for me because I wasn't able to help her or have the kind of knowledge to be able to do something about the situation. I learned about Eric, about Jim's vision, about his organization, and I want to be part of it. Not only as an ultimate player, but also a son to my mom. I think one thing that early recognition is critical helped me was to be able to reach out to other people who are still having the chance or privilege to do something about the cancer within their family or like friends. I think that's what Eric is all about. It's just not within the sport, it goes on and off the field. If you volunteer, even though it's only you, you can be able to inspire and aspire other people to help the movement. And you never know, people are just waiting to be reached out to, and they're only waiting for you.
San Francisco up by 1 at the half, third quarter, about 2 minutes away. We had 17 goals in the first quarter and then 14 in the second quarter. A 7-all second quarter after the FlameThrowers won 9-8 in the opening frame. You look at the East Division standings, the Rush and the Breeze neck and neck at the top. Montreal trying to keep pace, and the Royale playing DC at home tonight. Tough 2-game road trip. Chuck, you know the Breeze have never in franchise history won back-to-back games on the road in the same weekend? So they're trying to do that this weekend to stay in first place. We'll see how Toronto fares in the second half. New York and Philadelphia play tomorrow. Is the Empire try to make their playoff push? We'll see if they have it in them. In the West Division standings, San Francisco's at the top, game ahead of San Jose. How do you anticipate all this shaking out? Everybody's playing each other down the stretch.
Yeah, this is a very tricky division. I mean, San Francisco and San Jose have easily the deepest and most elite talent pool to draw from, but there's two teams in one area. It's been pretty impressive to see San Jose really blossom with what many would consider, you know, an inferior roster to San Francisco. Don't tell them that.
Well, you wonder if perhaps the hot start will catch up to them. They were 6-1. They've lost 2 in a row. They have a tough road game at San Diego today to try to keep the Growlers out of their playoff grill, as a manner of speaking. Elsewhere around the league, good races in the South and Midwest as well. Raleigh at 9-1. They're playing in Atlanta later this evening. Dallas at 8-2, Jacksonville at 7-3. The Cannons have only lost to the Flyers this year. You may forget because Jacksonville's behind Dallas in the standings, but Jacksonville beat Dallas in their only meeting so far. They will play again in July.
Yeah, Jacksonville, I mean, don't sleep on them. They've got so much talent. They're so fiery and just athletic. They create so many matchup problems. And yeah, I mean, they also have the luxury of generally being, you know, nobody's thinking of them as the top team, so they've got that underdog status. But yeah, they're big trouble.
And how about in the Midwest? Huge game tonight. Madison is at Pittsburgh. Virtually a must-win game for the Thunderbirds. If Pittsburgh could win it, then they'll be virtually in a tie for second place. And Pittsburgh still has 2 games left against Minnesota. Meanwhile, 2 weeks from tonight, our AUDL Game of the Week crew will be in Madison for the Wind Chill and the Radicals, the rubber match. Because Minnesota beat Madison in April, last weekend in overtime. Colin Camp's great catch at the very end of the game helped the Radicals prevail. I mean, every division has plenty of anticipation for the final 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah, this has got to be the funnest year to cover the AUDL I've ever been a part of. Like, you know, lots of great divisional races. We're getting to see these interdivisional matchups with the Cross Coast Challenge this year, which are so fun. You know, getting to see Pittsburgh go out to Seattle. That's a matchup I've been praying for years. I mean, these are 2 very different, very elite programs, and we're getting to see how they stack up. It's so fun because Ultimate is a very regional sport. There's a different style in the East than there is in the West. There's a different style coming out of the Northwest than there is, you know, looking at the South Division. The South Division is like almost like another sport.
Yep. Now, you played your college Ultimate in the Midwest at Northwestern, played the club division Midwest, then moved out to the Bay Area, spent time in LA. What region were you best suited for?
Oh, certainly for the West Coast. Very different mentalities between the two. But yeah, I mean, also, how about not having a winner? That makes it a lot easier to stay in shape and train.
True.
You know, that's nice.
Wu looking long. Cox couldn't get there. And Andrew Carroll wide open for the score.
Tight margin there for Darren Wu. Settles in. Puts just enough on that to get it over.
Just enough.
Yeah, look at this.
This ties things up at 16, appropriately 16 seconds into the third quarter.
And there's Carroll again. I mean, getting so much separation. It's a question of whether they can get him the disc. It's really never a question of whether he can get open. He can get open.
Andrew Carroll just turned 27 a couple weeks ago. Grew up here in Toronto, Queen's University. Wanted to play high school tennis originally, but the tennis team didn't have enough players, so they had to basically disband the tennis team. He had to pick another sport, and his choices were rugby or ultimate, and he chose ultimate. Wow. And he's avoided injury and become one of the best players in his country.
That's a pretty incredible story. I wonder how many crossover rugby ultimate Frisbee players there are. I can't think of any.
I think he could probably be a pretty good rugby player too, but you do have that injury risk. Davis lofts one. Sanchez versus McKenzie. Oh, Sanchez almost kept it alive into the sand pit near the sideline. That would have been a good greatest if another flamethrower had gotten there. This disc, traffic, and Davis gets another D, and Lloyd looking around like, was there a foul? The referees coming together, but it's going to be San Francisco's disc.
Yeah, Mark just a little shaken up, came down a little hard. But man, Antoine Davis slowed down, took a look around while he was hovering in the air above Mark Lloyd. That guy's on another level.
Bayless lets it fly. They're making Sanchez do a lot of running. And for the second straight time, Marcelo can't come up with it inbounds.
And you watch Sanchez with 2 consecutive poorly thrown deep shots, to be quite honest. And he bounces back up, runs back to play D.
This is the first 3-turnover point of the game, and Jarrett Marin just hucks and hopes. And Davis will get credit for another D.
Yeah, great poach off the backside.
Oh, Sanchez almost had it.
I think he did catch it, and it was a strip.
Martin doesn't think so. The referee did blow the whistle. And Mark Lloyd, I think, stepping in and said to Martin. Meanwhile, Lloyd was trying to talk Martin into not arguing the call. Lloyd's man, Marcy, was racing downfield, and Mark was like, come on, I'm trying to help you guys out. Cut me a break.
Right.
And there's Martin getting the D.
Disc don't lie. So potentially, Sanchez did not make the catch, if the theory holds.
Toronto looking for the lead. A deep shot that might work. Lloyd with Davis coming. It's Lloyd's disc and Toronto's lead.
In the same kind of confidence that San Francisco has in Sanchez and in Antoine Davis going deep, that's the kind of confidence Toronto has in Mark Lloyd. You see this play set up, you say, well, Mark's got a step. It's kind of a tough throw. He's already 20 yards away. But when it's Mark Lloyd and you're on Toronto, you throw that. Because this guy's done it so many times. Makes the good adjustment, puts Jordan completely out of the play and closes out before Antoine Davis has a chance to get in there. And here's Marcelo Sanchez playing one of the hardest points of the day. And Antoine Davis just hovering there.
I mean, this was the longest point of the game by far at 2 minutes and 14 seconds.
That's close. I mean, so in my opinion, a lot of times they say, if you stop rotation, then it's your disc. I'm not so sure. You have to have control of it, I think. So if you're kind of got a hand on the disc and you're trying to catch it, but you don't have control and somebody knocks it out, I mean, in my book, hey, you didn't catch it.
Tremendous defense from Toronto. They closed off every option, and the Rush are gaining momentum. Powell to Armitage.
Yeah, here comes the shift. I mean, we knew it had to happen. Here comes the shift. Toronto's not going to get tired. They're just not going to slow down, and San Francisco will. So when San Francisco gets tired, you're going to see mental errors like this, where a throw is just overthrown. And Toronto, meanwhile, is amping up the defensive pressure. They got legs for days. They got young guys who slept in their own bed last night and are ready to roll. And I wouldn't be surprised if Toronto, really puts the pressure on San Francisco and pulls away in this quarter.
Steve Armitage is exactly the type of guy that will take advantage of a tired opponent. A couple years ago, Scott Hasty, then the coach of the Rush, said about Armitage, his value isn't always cut 1, but it's cut 11 when his guy's going for the oxygen tank and he's still got fuel and energy. And that's basically Steve Armitage in a nutshell.
That's a pretty fun analogy. That's about right. Those are the guys you really don't want to guard because there's no end, right? There's no winning.
Now we'll see. Can San Francisco get back into a groove offensively where they can generate routine offensive holds?
Yeah, they really need easy holds. I mean, they don't have the legs to grind. So they need their offense to be easy.
Dahlman takes a shot. Cohen is there. Nice vision from Lucas Dahlman.
That's a pretty throw. That's a pretty throw. I mean, you'll see, so San Francisco, when you're dealing with a short roster, you're a little tired, you're going to see them throw more shots to the end zone. And it doesn't mean they're necessarily low percentage, but they're throws that you might not throw, you know, if you had a deep roster and you weren't getting tired. But basically, you know, Dahlman's got this. He's saying, you know what, we're tired. Greg's got a step. I'm going to see if I can just knock this one in there, and he does. Very nice throw from Lucas.
Greg Cohen had the bookends for the first break in the first quarter. That was back when it was just 4-3. He'll stay out there. Of course, Cohen had 3 goals and 2 assists in the finals 3 years ago, and he was a San Jose Spider.
Assist number 35, Lucas Coleman. Time to goal, 3 minutes, 11 seconds.
Great bid from Gavall. Better catch. Harris looking for Carroll. Wide open again. Too easy.
Yeah, you've got the luxury. If you're Cam Harris here, you've got the luxury of just knowing that you can't overthrow him. You know, like he's got another speed. He can burst one more time if you need to. So that allows you to not make a tough throw to space for a guy cutting away from you at 40 yards away. And you can basically just throw a hard outside in that goes up and comes down quickly, and just know that if Carroll needs to burst, you know, if it's a bad throw, which it wasn't, but if it's a bad throw, Carroll will make you look good. That makes it so much easier to throw and gives you so much more confidence to let it go.
In the first half, we saw Cam Harris with the off-balance flick. That was a totally balanced backhand, just great fundamentals, stepping out, smooth release.
Yeah, he's one of those guys, too, that can just come over the top on the backhand and really hit it with accuracy. It's kind of a volatile throw. The wind affects that quite a bit. There's no, you know, there's kind of no float on it. So if you miss it, you miss it. And a foot block, double team, and a turn from Toronto. So Toronto is pouring it on.
Rush looking for their first 3-goal lead of the game.
Little step around break from Lloyd and plenty of space for the bookends.
Breton Tan the score, and it's 20-17 with 8:01 remaining in the third. Andrew Carroll had scored 4 of the last 6 goals for Toronto, and now the first of the day for the young, energetic defender, Breton Tan.
Watch him put a foot on that flick. I mean, just destroys Pat Bayless's around. And here's that little step around break from Lloyd, similar to what Cam Harris does. Doesn't even set his pivot foot. And San Francisco's tired, so they just throw it out to the corner. Let one of their guys run onto it. Got to be happy if you're Sachin Rana right now.
The break train for Toronto staying out there with Lloyd and Martin and Harrison and Lindquist, McKenzie and Tan and Powell. It's a good defensive line. It'll be a tough hold, made a little bit easier because the pole will go to the brick.
Assist number 13, Jonathan Martin. Time to go 3 minutes, 59 seconds. 10 for Martin.
So it's a 5-1 run right now from Toronto to start this second half. San Francisco's only goal was that Dahlman shot to Cohen. Is it me, Chuck, or are a lot of San Francisco's cuts starting perhaps a little too far downfield, considering the legs that they currently have?
Yeah, it's a little bit of laziness and fatigue. Wow. Schlackett elects not to throw a 50-50.
Dahlman takes the shot and gets it there. Lucas Dahlman drops the hammer for Davis.
That was a pretty sick shot from Lucas Dahlman. I mean, he's taking deep shots that are really not, you know, by the textbook definition, these are not good shots. You don't want to take these shots. And he's putting them right where they need to be, doing it confidently. and, you know, giving San Francisco what they need, which is some goals. They need to score. They can't afford to grind here. It's funny to see Schlockett look that off. Much more open, Antoine Davis down the line with a backhand. He looks it off, and then Dahlman says, well, hang on a second. That's Antoine Davis.
4th goal for Davis, who said once that one of the big reasons he started playing Ultimate was because he saw the catch. And he was talking about Bo Kittredge's catch, where he jumped over an opponent in college in 2006. And Davis reacted to that like, whoa, athletes do play this game.
It's such a fun sport.
And now he's drawing comparisons to Kittredge.
100%, and rightly so. I mean, it's such a fun sport. The kind of catches you can make in Ultimate are so different than, say, like a wide receiver in football. I mean, you got to catch it with 2 hands, somehow land on your back so you don't drop it. In Ultimate, man, you can go up with 1 hand, catch it while you're falling backwards. Everybody can be Odell Beckham Jr. in Ultimate.
How about that shot from Andrew Carroll? Around and over the defense. How about that around backhand to the break side? I'm not sure we see throws like that very often.
Right, again, you know, this is the kind of coach that, or this is the kind of throw rather that you probably are told not to throw. But when you get to a certain level and you know your receivers, you know, hey, that worked. Doesn't hurt to have an elite receiver on the other end of your throw, too.
Another goal for Darren Wu. Fourth goal for Wu. Andrew Carroll now has 5 goals and 5 assists and a quarter and a half to play. There's 6:51 remaining here in the 3rd. Darren Wu, is he the type of guy that could be a true difference maker for this Toronto team in a time like championship weekend, do you think?
Well, it's tough to bring a guy online that quick because he's going to be kind of in my mind, where he separates himself is offensively as a receiver, and it's pretty hard. You know, we're seeing Sean Hamm, for example, go to San Diego, and he's playing great, but he's not playing at the same level because it's a whole new team. It's hard as a receiver to really hit your stride and really maximize your impact.
Schlockett breaking long. That'll work. Great catch by Sanchez earlier in the point. And Schlockett trying to get his teammates fired up. In your mind, how close does San Francisco need to be with, say, 6 minutes to go in the 4th to have a shot down the stretch?
I mean, geez, they should be up 1, probably. I mean, it's not going to get better, you know. But, you know, I mean, this is a team, this is a championship caliber team. There's a lot of players on here who can dig deep and also who have, you know, a sort of a resolve that you get when you're used to winning that you can draw from. So, you know, it's never out of hand.
Both these teams started the day in first place, and both teams basically in a position where they need to win, otherwise they risk falling out of first place. There was certainly contact from behind, and I think the referees and Devin Williams agreed there was a foul. Yearwood will get the disc.
Well, I mean, he's going with his right hand there, and if he's going to bid on Yearwood's left shoulder, or right shoulder rather, he needs to use his left hand. There's really no way to make a clean right-handed bid there.
Harris to Carroll. Toronto back up by 3. 5:53 remaining in the 3rd.
So here's the bid. You know, if he leads with that left shoulder and stays outside of Yearwood's frame, I'm not sure that he could have reached it, but certainly he wouldn't have fouled. I'm not a big fan of that bid, the way he set it up, because he's just diving into his back, you know. And I mean, Yearwood's a guy, he's a big enough guy, you're probably not going to rattle him too much, but I mean, he had no play there.
Toronto's offense in a pretty good groove right now. And with Mark Lloyd leading the D-line along with Jonathan Martin and Jeff Powell, they found a pretty good balance of O and D. I like how here in Toronto, obviously it's a hockey town, a hockey country. Schlockett airs one out, and Armitage had more legs in that circumstance. He comes up with a D. After a score, the public address announcer waits until the game restarts to announce the goal scorer and the catch, and the assist, I should say. Martin's throw sails out of bounds.
Yeah, pretty loose sequence there from Jonathan Martin. I think he actually traveled, came back inbounds, a little upfield to where he was, never really got his feet set. He was in a hurry to throw that, and it ended up not being inbounds. So that's kind of a lesson. You need to set your feet, I guess, unless you're Cam Harris, and make a good throw.
Got to be a really special player to throw it well off balance. Certainly not anything you would coach a player to do.
This is a fun matchup, seeing Sanchez cutting against Powell. Oh, Powell went down. Looks like he planted hard on his left foot. I don't know if that was an ankle or a knee, but planted hard on his left leg. You could see right away something gave out. Sanchez catches. Here's Powell setting that left foot, and then, oh, he rolled the ankle. Ouch.
Non-contact thing. Certainly a concern for the Rush and for Team Canada. Five weeks away, less than that, from competition in Poland. Johnson runs it down. Lloyd tried to get a mark on, but wow. Jordan Marcy bobbled and dropped it.
He caught his hat, but he did not catch the disc. That's tough. That's tough because the downfield cuts were few and far between from San Francisco. Antoine ended up throwing to a barely open Christian Johnson, and then you turn it over on the dish pass. Tough break for San Francisco.
Mark Lloyd takes the time out, get the Toronto O back on the field with a chance to take a 4-score lead.
So here's Marcy, just bobbles it just by accident. Somehow has the wherewithal to catch backhanded behind his back his hat. So it's not a problem with bad hands.
That would be a good clip for the AUDL blooper reel.
Yeah, 100%.
Unfortunately for the Stanford alum, Jordan Marcy. Mark Lloyd, just his 3rd game of the season out of the University of Western Ontario. I mean, in his first 2 games this year, Lloyd, the 2 games combined, had 4 goals, 4 assists, and 6 Ds with no turnovers. I mean, he has produced whenever he's been on the field, and you think if this Toronto team can get to the playoffs and if they can somehow get home field advantage, and then they get Lloyd after the World Championships in Poland back for the playoffs, Toronto might have more of a path to the championship this year than they've had the last couple of years, because this Toronto team, think about it, they've only lost 10 times in franchise history. They've lost 4 times to Montreal, they've lost 3 times to DC, and they've lost 3 times in the playoffs. All 3 losses to Bo Kittredge in the playoffs. The Spiders and the Roughnecks. Deep shot looking for Powell. Cox is there. Powell's got it. Carroll has the disc. And Carroll has the assist. In 2 throws, Toronto goes 80 yards. Ben Burrell the score, and the Rush lead by 4.
And don't look now, but Carroll is an up-and-coming superstar for this Toronto team. I mean, it's fun to watch this team evolve. A couple years ago, we watched and scouted Linkvist and Yearwood with Mark Lloyd starting to surge. Now we're seeing a new superstar come to the front. Watch him go up against pressure. Really didn't have you know, a great angle. Doesn't have, you know, huge size or anything like that, but plays it perfectly. Keeps his right shoulder on his defender so that he can't lose position, makes the catch, and then makes a pretty tough little floaty backhand. He's doing it all right now. And he's a guy that, you know, probably isn't scouted all that intelligently yet.
He's got 6 goals and 6 assists. Still plenty of time in the third quarter. Carroll had plenty of goals coming into today, 26 of them. They'd only had 11 assists in 7 games.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a function of just this being a very high-scoring game, or if he's coming online with his throws a little bit. He's made some very elite throws.
And Toronto is without Isaiah Massick-Kelly today. Massick-Kelly, who was one of the top guys in the league 2 years ago in terms of plus-minus, has taken more of a distributor role this year, not scoring quite as much. Massick-Kelly, 15 goals and 30 assists in his 9 games this year.
30 assists is a lot. I mean, that's interesting. A couple years ago, he was just kind of an ogre that you could not guard deep. And now a very complete player.
Under 3 minutes to go in the third. This game teetering for San Francisco, and they needed that quick hold. Jordan Marcy makes the catch in the end zone. The hat stays on this time. It's a 3-score game.
You know, so it's fun to watch San Francisco contrasting these guys against San Diego last week. San Diego kind of wasn't playing well, fell behind, had a huge comeback, obviously, the biggest comeback I've seen in quite a while. But you see the difference in their body language. Look at San Francisco. I mean, are they winning? Are they losing? They always look the same. They're confident. They're dialed in. They're not overthinking it. They're focused, and they are ready to win. They're ready to win this game. And San Diego, one of the biggest things they had to overcome to come back last week was mental. I mean, they had to start believing in themselves, stop doubting that they could make these plays, stop getting in their head about the fact that they're down 7. And that was probably the biggest obstacle to them winning. They were able to overcome it, but you can see that that's not even a factor for San Francisco, and that's because San Francisco is a town that's used to winning titles. I mean, these guys are used to winning. Co-ed, men's, women's. All they do is win.
Burrell looking for Carroll. In position for another assist. And there it is. The 7th assist of the day for Carroll. Armstrong scores the goal.
Yeah, you almost feel like he should get something else in his stats for being wide open and catching it deep. Very hard to do, but we're only going to give him assist. We should give him like a 60-yard catch. That's got to count for something, right?
Well, one day we'll keep track of yardage and how much yardage a receiver gains. And obviously that would be pretty labor intensive to keep track of with the number of throws we have. I think just keeping track of completions is hard. But, you know, a lot of guys are great quarterbacks who don't throw a ton of assists. Thompson McKnight, for example, not among the AUDL leaders in assists, but he's in the top 5 in the league in hockey assists. The throw before the throw that leads to the score. And he is as valuable to a team's O-line as an anchor as anyone in the league.
Yeah, that's a really important stat, too.
Starting number 80, Connor Armstrong. Assist number 3, Andrew Carroll.
Dahlman back out there leading the offense. That throw was hot and too hot.
So finally, Lucas Dahlman regresses to the mean. And you can see, so look, he's got a big smile on his face. He's not in his head. This is kind of what I'm talking about. That was horrible. That was about the worst throw he's going to make all day. And right after it, he's not in his head. He's still confident. He's ready to play D. You know, like mentally, these guys are on another level as Antoine Davis gets a sweet poach D.
Antoine Davis, certainly the game's leader in Ds. I think that's number 4. Coming flying through. Powell back on the field. He certainly looks like he's okay. They called a pick. So Davis is going to have to give this disc back. The goal will come off the board for the moment. How about Powell throwing his body around there? Dahlman under control to Sanchez. To Marcy. Jordan Marcy with his second goal of the quarter.
That's pretty offense from San Francisco. You know, they go from taking kind of a high-risk shot right up the gut to Antoine Davis. They have to reset it, and they double score by dumping and swinging and putting it out to space. Well done. Just caught a glimpse of Phil Watanabe in the crowd, a local legend here.
Yeah, he's the Toronto Rush's official team president.
Yeah, he's one of those guys, certainly just a great ambassador to the sport. An elite player and just, yeah, one of the good guys.
There's Phil.
And how about that smile, by the way? I mean, just infectious.
He doesn't even realize he's on the video board, I don't think. We still get the big smile. So it's back to a 3-score game. San Francisco obviously going to need a string of breaks. Carroll looking for assist number 8. "15 seconds off the clock as Carroll connects with Harris."
It's got to be fun to put one up to guys like Cam Harris. You know, he's just, he's never going to misplay it. You almost never see Cam Harris misread a disc. And his last second adjustments are so good that he very rarely goes up over someone because his adjustments are so good, his reads are so good that he gives himself position. He's usually going up with, you know, a nice, easy, high percentage catch for you too.
Big game for Andrew Carroll. In the season opener, Cam Harris recorded his 150th career goal. And that made him just the second player in the history of the AUDL to have at least 150 goals and 150 assists in their career. It was Harris and Keenan Plew of Indianapolis. Part of that obviously is longevity, but it's also a statement to the greatness of their careers.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine how many years I would have to play to match those stats?
Are they counting goals by 2 or by 5 at that point?
Yeah, it just doesn't happen. You don't get to 150. I don't care how long you play. You just don't get there.
Toronto, though, looking for another goal. Lloyd to the end zone. Well read by Lindquist. A break for the Rush and the largest lead of the game for Toronto.
Wow, that looked like a pretty good shot. Mark has surprisingly good accuracy and touch with so much power from both sides. Puts this kind of right where he wants it, but watch Sanchez close here. Great speed, chops his feet so that he doesn't, basically so he doesn't trip Lindquist. I mean, a guy like Sanchez, I didn't think there was going to be any contested. That looked like a real nice throw to a great receiver. Lindquist closes out anyway, makes it look easy. But a guy like Sanchez running that hard, when they're down, when he's been a primary receiver, oh no, it's just, he's a coach's dream.
And Lindquist just turned 33 this past May. He's the official team vice president of marketing. Lindquist entered this season with a mind-boggling 172 assists in his career.
Yeah, you want to talk about a guy who A, has all the throws, and B, really understands how all those throws are affected by the wind. I mean, he is so intelligent in different situations and different weather.
Lindquist 23 assists before today's game this season, closing in on 200 in his AUDL career.
30 seconds remaining in the third quarter.
This feels like a must score for San Francisco. There was contact, and the clock stops. 23 seconds for the FlameThrowers.
Contact is the call against Toronto. 10-yard
The Rush will get the disc to start the fourth.
Lindquist with a nice defensive adjustment downfield, switches off and stops Schlockett, who was wide open for a goal there. Great heads-up play.
I take that back, Chuck. The FlameThrowers will start with the disc in the fourth quarter, and that makes that goal very important, especially if they could get a stop in the last 17 seconds. Johnson gets it back to a 4-score game.
what a sick throw. Just kind of a buzzsaw flick from Joel Schlockett. Puts it there with as much speed and as much edge on it as he can.
Now, you got to be teammates with Joel Schlockett early in his career.
Yeah, back when he was just great.
And what is he now?
World class.
Did you see that world-class creativity from him coming?
Well, he used to be just so fundamentally sound. I mean, he would take shots deep, and they just looked so high percentage. Everybody else throws them, and you say, "Oh, I wonder what's going to happen." Like, you know. And when Joel throws it, you just say, "Cool, I'm going to get some water," because clearly that's another goal for Joel Schlockett. I don't know. He was always so fundamentally sound. He's gotten to be so good and so, you know, so good as a receiver, as a reset, as a thrower, as a deep, as a mid, and his ability to just solve problems on the fly is really fun to watch.
Final seconds in the quarter, and McKnight's throw sails too far for Darren Wu. A missed opportunity for Toronto, and perhaps a glimmer of hope for San Francisco on the road with a short-handed roster in these steamy Saturday night conditions. The FlameThrowers had a 16-15 lead at the half. They got outscored 11-6 in that third quarter, and yet they will start with possession in the fourth. 3 down, 1 to go. The AUDL's Cross Coast Challenge has 12 minutes left. San Francisco and Toronto into the fourth next. Toronto 26 and San Francisco 22. Getting ready for the fourth quarter here at Varsity Stadium. AUDL plus-minus leaders through week 11 in the AUDL. Atlanta's Matt Smith, #1 with 40 goals, 18 assists, 7 Ds for the Hustle. Dallas's Jay Frood, plus 55. Rick Gross, one of the underrated stars in the league for the Indianapolis AlleyCats. A guy that San Francisco certainly could use in this fourth quarter. Unfortunately, he flew to France yesterday to compete with Team USA at Beach Worlds. Mark Burton, another guy who's in France right now, competing with the Irish national team at Beach Worlds. And those are certainly 5 MVP candidates. I wrote on the AUDL.com on Thursday, Chuck. I mean, there might be 25 or 30 MVP candidates by the time it's all said and done. I'm not really sure how it's going to be decided. Raleigh's Jonathan Nethercutt might be the favorite right now. He's leading the league in assists, but he's going to miss the next few games. And there's got to be some benchmark for playing a certain number of games to be the MVP. It's kind of an unwritten rule, but it's going to be a really fascinating debate down the stretch.
Yeah, it always is. You know, looking at Mark Burton's numbers, he's on the leaderboard with only 7 games under his belt. I've always been blown away by that guy's ability to produce.
San Francisco could get it within 3 with a hold here. It's Schlockett and Marcy playing catch. And then turning it over.
Just a terrible throw from Jordan Marcy.
Mark Lloyd picks up. He'll take the swing to the young man, Breton Tan. Mario Zlatic. I asked Satch and Reyna before the game on a turn, do you want Mark Lloyd handling or do you want him more downfield? And his response was basically, he's basically our best player. Anytime we can get the disc in his hands, it's a good thing. The more, the better.
Wow. That was a tough catch against Marcy.
And Toronto with a break Less than a minute into the fourth.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with Coach Reyna. The more he touches the disc, the better. If it's as a receiver, great. If it's as a handler, great. I mean, it's all upside. That was actually a very difficult reset to him. Looked like it was for sure going to be a turnover. He just catches right through Jordan Marcy. So here's the throwback. Looks like it's going to be D, and then Lloyd just closes it. And then immediately with a nice high percentage break up the gut to Jeff Powell. He's a guy, he's just always going to, it's all upside. The more he touches it, the better the chances that we're going to score.
Powell picks up the assist as the Rush stretch the lead back to 5. After today, the Toronto Rush have a decent break. They don't play again until July the 8th against Montreal here at home. Depending on what happens between the Royale and the Breeze, that could be a game for first place. There's the first really easy hold that San Francisco has put together in quite a while. Sanchez wide open for the score.
Yeah, pretty throw from Cohen. Gets the disc, has an immediate flick huck look, but there's kind of some clogging on the, some help defense there from Lindqvist. And he just makes a nice golf shot, just chips it in over the top. And Martin kind of looked back saying like, hey, we're forced backhand, what the heck? But that was a backhand.
It's a 4-goal game, 10:46 to go. Madison and Pittsburgh are underway, 2-2 in the first quarter in Pittsburgh. Huge game for those two teams. Earlier today in the Midwest, Chuck, Indianapolis overcame a 4-goal second half deficit to beat Detroit. So the AlleyCats get their 3rd win of the year. Oh, there's a great D from Kevin Cox. He's good for 1 or 2 of those every game.
Such an explosive bidder, so fun to watch.
Time to goal, 1 minute 14 seconds. Sanchez from Gallman at 1:14.
Cohen over the top, too far. Those are the mistakes in the first half. You think, okay, you can maybe live with them in the fourth quarter when you're down by 4. Every one of those mistakes just diminishes your chances of a comeback so much more.
Yeah, it's tough. Got to punch those in. This D line needs to convert at a very high rate if they're gonna come back.
Laser from Harris and too much sauce on that chuck.
That was some really nice pressure. Good adjustment by the mark, and I think there was also a poacher who forced Cam Harris to kind of at the last second make a little adjustment.
Cohen in traffic, can't make the catch.
Cox.
Carroll and Harris with a D.
Yeah, and Cox great at layout Ds. Maybe not as great at hucks. Those were 2 really loose throws.
Armstrong shook his defender Reinhardt. Now Wu, yard shy of midfield, ahead to Burrell. Everyone else on the rush is behind him. Wu takes off. Wu accelerates. Wu scores. Nice to be young.
Yeah, he's fitting in just fine so far. I mean, he recognized the same thing you did, which is that everybody's even or behind the disc. That means all you have to do is win a foot race. There's no help. There's plenty of space. You got Burrell in power position waiting for a cutter, and Wu happily obliges with a sick layout right on that back corner.
There's the D from Cox, but the loose throw easily D'd by the tandem of Harris and Carroll. And then this Vancouver connection.
Yeah, here's the moment. Nobody downfield. Darren Wu's actually behind Cox and just says, man, all I got to do is get out in front. If I get a step, then And what happens is he's got position going deep. Burrell's got the disc, and he's close, so he can make an accurate leading pass. You know, it's a very high percentage shot to the end zone. Great job by Wu to just recognize it and capitalize.
Darren Wu averaged about 30 goals a season over the last 3 years with Vancouver. And keep in mind, you know, if he was an American, he wouldn't have been allowed to drink during most of those years. That's how young he was, 18, 19, and 20. He could score a lot of goals in this league by the time he's done. Dahlman takes a shot. Davis versus Lloyd and McKenzie. And Antoine Davis rises up once more. Even Mark Lloyd can appreciate that.
Yeah, Mark Lloyd's done that to a lot of guys over the years. And I mean, this is something. This is just a big, I'm betting on my guy kind of flick huck from Lucas Dahlman. McKenzie, great defender, very athletic, good in the air. And Mark Lloyd, one of the best in the air. And I mean, this isn't close. This looks like Kittredge in his heyday, just two hands skying people. You know, I mean, that doesn't happen. So that's the kind of talent that you're seeing with Antoine Davis. The reason he's been on SportsCenter's top 10 is the reason he went from being a practice player to being, one of your primary options on offense.
That's all you can do if you're Mark Lloyd in that situation. Just give him some dap and hope to get him the next time.
100%. Just put it up. We need to score. We need to get our defense out here.
Davis, certainly a big-time competitor, still didn't look too happy on the sidelines.
Yeah, game face. Game face is on. Game face is on. So an offsides there on the pull, I believe. Toronto gets it at the 55.
Thompson near the D on Harris. The throw sails high, and Carroll made a bid but couldn't get there. It was Johnson that ushered it down. Another chance for the FlameThrowers to get back within 3. We tick under 8 minutes to play. Give all to Thompson.
You got to score this. I don't know how many timeouts San Francisco has, but you'd almost like to see the O-line out here. 2 timeouts left. I mean, this is too shaky. Not to say these guys can't score, but we have to punch in all these possessions.
This is Sam Swink to Thompson to Cox. They've worked it the length of the field, and they do punch it in. So they are able to save the timeouts, and it's back to a 3-score game with 7:22 to go.
And that's big. Just mentally, that's big to be able to get a block. They generated a block before and had some loose throws, turnovers. For this D-line to generate another turn and then maintain possession and actually get a nice open shot to the end zone. That gives you confidence. I mean, that's what you need. These guys need to be confident. They need to be able to strike and score here if they're going to come back.
Sawyer Thompson staying out in the field for this deep point. Antoine Davis returning as well. I was asking Yo Kawaoka about Sawyer Thompson, and he said the scouting report is he's a lefty, and he's always hunting for layout Ds. And then Yo said, he's my kind of player. Lefty and hunting for layout Ds.
No doubt. Yo Kawaoka, one of the most exciting bidders I've ever had the chance to play with.
Kawaoka now 36 years old, leading the FlameThrowers as the head coach. Looking long for Lloyd. Sanchez defending. And Lloyd on the second effort somehow makes the play. How did he do that?
He's on another level. He's always just been a guy, you scratch your head and you say, I think we can guard this guy. I think we have a scheme that'll work against this guy. But watch him, put Marcelo Sanchez slightly out of position. Actually goes up too early here, but is able to adjust and just rip it an inch before Sanchez can touch it. And it's just something you get used to seeing. Like, I don't know how he's going to do it, but he's going to catch this goal. Wow, something special. And this is Mark Lloyd not at 100%. It's worth mentioning. He's fine, he's playing well, but there's another level to this guy.
McKnight giving Lloyd a chance to make the play. Obviously, if he doesn't make that catch, San Francisco has the disc with a chance to get within 2.
Assist number 19, Thompson, McKnight. Time of the goal, 5 minutes. Lloyd,
7 minutes to play.
5 minutes. Field up! Field up! Field up! Field up!
Oh, wow. Just a miscue downfield.
Jonathan Martin, one of the easiest Ds he's ever had. Cross field, shy of the end zone, but not anymore. Jeffrey Wu with the score. And what a swing right there. Lloyd with the bid, and then Toronto's D with a break.
Yeah, we've seen this so many times over the years. Watch him sit down on this and just dial a hammer cross field to open the whole offense up. But I've covered at least a half dozen games against Toronto, different teams who are clawing their way back with a 2, 3, 4 goals down. And they get a little momentum, and then you just see Toronto stomp it. Just right away, they take the momentum back. Mark Lloyd makes a big catch. They put a little pressure on. And they get back-to-back goals to put it to 5. That's pretty tough. If you're San Francisco to go down 5 with 6.5 minutes left, that's a tall order, especially against this team at home.
Second D of the day for Martin on that point. Martin and Tan are the 2 members of the Rush with multiple Ds in the game. Another assist for Zlatic, his second. There are 9 different guys on Toronto, Chuck. 9 different guys that have multiple assists in the game, led by Andrew Carroll with 8. Cohen, he'll take that shot. Sanchez versus McKenzie. Here we go. Marcelo Sanchez takes care of business.
Yeah, great job by Marcelo. The big fundamental, doing his thing, gets inside position and makes, I mean, he essentially is going to make it as easy as it can be. If it has to be hard, then he'll make a full extension layout. He'll greatest it in before he falls into a sand trap. You know, but if he can make it easy by getting position, absorbing that impact, and getting that inside one-handed catch, that's what he's going to do. He's a guy who just does so many things right. Takes low percentage or middle percentage shots and turns them into high percentage shots.
I like how you called Sanchez the big fundamental, stealing Tim Duncan's nickname, because while Sanchez is not perhaps one of the greatest players of all time, a la Duncan, they've got similar styles, soft-spoken, business-like, relentlessly effective. Duncan and Sanchez.
Yeah, he doesn't have that Tim Duncan look, though, does he? That little sideways glance that Duncan will give referees to get calls. I've never seen Sanchez do anything like that.
How about that effort from Sawyer Thompson? The layout D, he's been hunting all game long.
Yeah, you called that. I mean, he was so happy to see that disc go up.
We cross over the midway point in this 4th quarter. Could San Francisco give us another memorable comeback? Certainly their circumstances very different than San Diego last week, almost exactly opposite circumstances. And yet this is a team full of some championship pedigrees. Thompson hits Williams. And the break to bring San Francisco within 3 with 5:34 to go.
So that's a pretty nice 2-point swing here, or 2-point run rather, from San Francisco. Big layout D from Sawyer, and then he steps in and just makes a really nice IO backhand break. Cam Harris sort of concedes it. It didn't have his feet under him. That is a tough throw.
So you think about the typical club tournament. Maybe you'll play 4 games in a day. Each game is to 15. We're on our way to 60-plus points in this game. It's basically the equivalent of 3 or 4 club games, non-stop, very little break, hot conditions. Let's see if Toronto gets a little wobbly here after that last break.
Yeah, it's a good point. You know, they say it's just one game, but it's bigger than any game you'll play at a club tournament, that's for sure. It's also, I mean, it forces you into that anaerobic zone. I mean, guys can't really recover, so you're just redlining yourself at certain points during these games in a way that you might not during a club game. So it's fun to see how guys respond when they're very tired. And you can get very tired in these games.
Thompson went deep, came back. Thompson McKnight came back under for the disc. Back to Yearwood. He'll float that one long. Cohen lurking. And it was Thompson who deflected it, and the interference was called. And Lindquist thinks he was fouled, and the official agrees. I'll take a look at the replay after this point concludes. Lindquist overshoots Lloyd, but Martin saves the day.
Great job by Martin.
What do you think on that deep shot between Lindquist and Cohen watching it live?
Yeah, that was hard to see live. Let's see if we can get a better look at it here. Link seemed very sure, but he's one of those guys who's always a little vocal. Let's see, he goes up, gets fouled by Sawyer, I believe. I think number 17, Sawyer Thompson, was into him, kind of fell into him when he was trying to make the catch. Seems like a good call to me. It's tough, you know, it's tough to make those calls when you got 4 or 5 guys all, you know, going up for a disc. It's obviously kind of a loose pass. Here it is again. See, he goes up right when he's about to make the catch. Sawyer, I don't know if did he touch his arm though? I mean, Sawyer gets in there at the last second.
It's a tough call. Tough call for San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. Lindquist always talks, though, doesn't he? He always lets the ref know what he thinks happened.
Lim looking for Johnson. Justin Lim. Oh, Johnson mistimed his jump. He was all alone, but he could not come up with it. That was a killer.
Hey, you can't have that. The wind kicked at the last second. Johnson had already committed to his jump. And with those tired legs after a long run, you know, sometimes when you're fresh, you overjump. You jump up and catch it at chest height. He wasn't over jumping on that one. The wind did the rest.
Heartbreaking sequence for San Francisco. And it continues. Not intended for Jeffrey Wu, but the young man out of the University of Guelph, who wasn't sure he was going to play today. It was between Wu and Tutulia for the last spot. They gave Wu the nod right before the game. Making a clutch grab right there.
If you're Toronto, I mean, I was talking with David Hogan, coach of the Pittsburgh Thunderbirds. They've got 3 minutes left in a 4-goal lead. If you're Toronto, you may as well just play catch. There's really no reason to advance the disc. You're winning, and 3 minutes seems like a long time, but it's not if you just reset. So you kind of see them swinging the disc around, hitting their open reset. That's more or less all they have to do to win this game in a timeout, it looks like.
Yep, Sachin Rana takes the timeout with 2:52 to go. The Toronto Rush trailed by as many as 3 in the first half, but they're less than 3 minutes away from a huge home win in the AUDL Cross Coast Challenge. With Chuck Kindred and our entire Fulcrum Media crew, Evan Lepler with you here in Toronto. Joel Schlockett getting that left foot, left calf worked on by Malika Anderson, the athletic trainer, strength and conditioning coach for the FlameThrowers.
She's also, I think, an in-house chiropractor for Google.
How about that?
That's cool. That girl's cool. We like her.
It is always impressive the amount of respect she has earned. You talk to anyone in the Bay Area Ultimate community, and it is nothing but love for what Malika does in the Ultimate world.
She's a heck of a player, too.
Yep.
She's tough. She threw to my guy a couple times.
Mark Lloyd connecting with Jeff Lindquist. Toronto matches its largest lead, 32-27. And if you joined us late, it was a 9-6 lead for San Francisco late in the first. The Rush got a couple goals late in the quarter, was 9-8 after one. The teams basically traded throughout the second quarter. It was 16-15 San Francisco at the half. But then the Rush really broke it away in the third quarter. A 5-1 run to start the third quarter. And San Francisco really hasn't been closer than 3 ever since.
Yeah, like we were saying at the outset, it's a tale of two halves. When you travel with a short roster, you've got two things working against you. One, you're traveling, which puts you at a disadvantage physically. And two, if you have a short roster, this is a long game. And I think the collapse that I was thinking would happen in the fourth quarter kind of happened in the third quarter. We saw Toronto put a lot of pressure on and get out to a lead, which they've been able to sustain. But there's no doubt that San Francisco has not been able to go tit for tat for 4 quarters, and that's generally what happens with a short roster on the road.
And yet, what generally doesn't happen with a Bay Area team, they usually play with you to the very end. So an unfamiliar position for San Francisco for sure, but a win that Toronto really had to have today, 2 minutes away from locking it up. That disc overthrown, and the Rush will take over. If either Montreal or Ottawa can help the Rush out, they could be back in first place by themselves. If the Breeze suffer a loss on the road, and again, we mentioned it at halftime, but the Breeze in their franchise's history have never won back-to-back road games in the same weekend. They'll try to change that today and tomorrow. Armitage to Jones. Toronto without Isaiah Massick-Kelly, without Jackie Howe, without Ian McKenzie, who is leading the squad in D's coming into today, without Remy Ojo, one of the electric defenders in the league. Missing Jay Boychuk, J.J. Edwards as well. Toronto now less than a minute away.
You can tell Sachin Reyna told these guys, look, if there's an open deep shot, you don't necessarily need to take it the way you would the rest of the game. Look for the reset, wait for the guy to get open under. We want to possess the disc, and you can see they're doing that. They're running this clock down.
Armitage tacks on another. The 18th goal of the second half for the Rush. They've outscored San Francisco 18-11 since halftime, Chuck.
Yeah, that's what happens. I think it didn't really help either that San Francisco, is traveling with the short roster. And it just got so hot and humid. And the sun, it's early in the day. The game started, like we said, at 5 p.m. So the sun is still high in the sky now. When we got here, it was cooking these guys. So that saps your endurance even more.
And it wasn't even like they had a chance to warm up in it. They were warming up in the rain.
That's right. That's right.
So Toronto going to improve to 8-3. They've got Montreal and New York at home and a road game at Ottawa. Certainly 11-3 is within their grasp, as well as a #1 seed in the East Division playoffs. They'll schlock it back out there for perhaps the final point. Thompson to the end zone. And Wu rips it away. Not Darren Wu, but Jeffrey Wu.
Yeah, lackadaisical play from Devin Williams. And that'll do it.
Final completion to Mark Lloyd, and the Toronto Rush victorious on their home field over San Francisco to wrap up the first ever AUDL Cross Coast Challenge. Toronto gives its fans a pretty impressive performance today. A nice job by our camera crew finding number 3 in the red and the black, because this was Andrew Carroll's game. He finished today with 8 assists and 6 goals to lead Toronto to the promised land.
Yeah, so impressive, and a guy that he's just kind of hitting that apex. He's a guy you'll be watching for years to come. And what an awesome addition to this incredible Ultimate community here in Toronto.
San Francisco's 3-game winning streak comes to an end, and the FlameThrowers don't have anything easy down the stretch. 3 of their final 4 games are on the road. They've got trips to San Jose and Seattle down the stretch. Also a home game with the Cascades that we'll have on July 15th on the AUDL Game of the Week. But today belongs to the Toronto Rush. They improved to 8-3 on the back of number 3. Mark Lloyd, Cam Harris, Jeff Lindquist, Jonathan Martin, and others made plenty of plays, but Andrew Carroll was the star. Final score, the Rush 33, the FlameThrowers 27. That'll do it for our coverage tonight here from Toronto. For Chuck Kindred, Evan Lepler saying good night from Toronto. We're off next week. We'll be back with you from Madison. The Wind Chill and the Radicals on the 1st of July. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, everybody. So long from Toronto.